He called her weak, pathetic, a burden the pack couldn't afford, so he dragged his pregnant mate into the cursed blight zone and left her there to die. 5 years later, she returned, but she wasn't alone, and she wasn't weak anymore. What emerged from those dead woods would make him wish he'd killed her when he had the chance. Chapter 1: The Return. The first howl shattered the night at precisely 3 minutes past midnight. Gary nearly dropped his patrol report. His hand found the hilt of his blade instinctively, eyes snapping to the northern ridge where the sound originated. The Deadwood Ridge, the place where nothing, absolutely nothing, had made a sound in 5 years, not since the blight consumed it. "Alpha!" Gary called down from the watchtower, his voice tight with an edge Riker recognized immediately. Fear. His beta didn't scare easily. "You need to hear this." Riker climbed the rough-hewn stairs 3 at a time, his wolf stirring beneath his skin with agitation. The night air bit cold against his face as he emerged onto the platform. Gary stood rigid at the northern edge, knuckles white on the wooden railing. "What am I listening for?" The howl came again before Gary could answer. Riker's blood turned to ice. It wasn't one voice. It was dozens, maybe hundreds, moving in perfect synchronization, a chorus that rose and fell with mechanical precision. No natural wolf pack howled like that. No pack could. Each voice blended into the next, creating a sound that was less communication and more declaration. "We are here. We are many. We are coming." "Sweet moon above," Riker breathed. "How many are there?" "I don't know."
I can't hold
Gary's jaw clenched. "But Alpha,
Get back, you
that's
won't
coming
touch
from
her."
the Blight Zone. Nothing lives in the Blight Zone. The corruption kills everything that enters within 48 hours. You've seen what happens. The animals that wander in come out twisted, wrong, if they come out at all. I know what the Blight does. Oh, he knew. 5 years ago, he'd sentenced someone to that fate. Walked away while she screamed his name, begging him not to leave her there. He'd told himself it was mercy. A quick death was better than the slow rot of weakness dragging down the entire pack. He'd been so certain she'd be dead within days. The howling grew closer. Not gradually, but in sudden leaps, as if whatever made those sounds moved faster than anything natural should move. "Light the warning fires," Riker commanded, his alpha voice cutting through the night. "Full defensive positions. Wake everyone! I want warriors on every wall and civilians in the inner sanctum within 5 minutes." Gary was already moving, bellowing orders down to the pack below. Bells began to ring. Wolves scrambled from their beds, warriors grabbing weapons, parents shepherding children to safety. The pack moved with practiced efficiency, the drill they'd run countless times, but never truly expected to use. Riker kept his eyes fixed on the northern tree line. The forest there looked dead, even in daylight. Trees bleached white as bone, vegetation withered to gray ash, the ground itself cracked and lifeless. The blight had spread slowly over the past 5 years, consuming everything organic, turning the northern territory into a wasteland. They'd abandoned 3 outposts already, retreating as the corruption advanced. No one knew what caused it. The elders spoke of ancient magic gone wrong, of a wound in the earth itself that leaked poison into the land. All Riker knew for certain was that nothing survived the blight, which made the howling impossible. Movement at the tree line caught his eye. They emerged from the dead forest like smoke given form. Wolves, but wrong. Too large, each one easily twice the size of a normal pack wolf, their shoulders reaching heights that would put them eye level with a grown man. Their fur ranged from deep charcoal to pure white, but every single one bore strange markings that seemed to pulse with faint silver light. Patterns like frost on glass, like veins of lightning frozen across their pelts. Their eyes glowed. Not the natural gold or amber of wolf eyes catching light, but silver-white luminescence that burned steady and cold. Like moonlight trapped in bone, and they moved as one, perfectly synchronized. When one stepped forward, a dozen others mirrored the movement. When one turned its head, the rest followed in a wave of precise coordination. It was like watching a single organism with 100 bodies. What in the name of... Gary had returned to the tower, and the words died in his throat. The pack, if it could be called a pack, flowed across the open ground between the forest and North Pine territory like water, like shadow, like nothing Riker had ever seen. They moved in formation, creating patterns that hurt to look at, geometries that seemed wrong somehow. Behind them, at the center of the formation, walked a figure. Human. Or human-shaped at least. She wore armor of dark leather that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, fitted close to her frame but clearly designed for combat. Boots that came to mid-thigh, bracers on her forearms studded with what looked like bone or claw. No helmet. Her hair streamed behind her like a white banner, loose and wild, catching the moonlight. Even from this distance, Riker could see her face. The world tilted. No, it couldn't be. Alpha? Gary grabbed his arm, steadying him. What's wrong? Do you recognize... Serafina. The name came out barely a whisper. Gary leaned closer. What? It's Serafina. Louder now, though his voice sounded hollow in his own ears. She was my mate. 5 years ago. Gary went very still. Every wolf in the pack knew the story, or a version of it. The weak Omega who'd nearly gotten the Alpha killed during a hunt. The liability who consumed resources without contributing strength. The mate bond that Riker had severed for the good of the pack. The woman he'd left in the Blight Zone to die. That's impossible, Gary said flatly. Nothing survives the Blight. You said yourself she'd be dead within... I know what I said. But there she was, walking at the head of an army that shouldn't exist, commanding wolves that looked like nightmares given flesh, moving across his territory like she owned it. And she was smiling, not a warm smile, not the shy, gentle expression he remembered from before. This smile was all edges and ice, the smile of something that knew exactly how dangerous it was and enjoyed the knowledge. The pack halted at the border markers, perfectly synchronized, as if responding to a command no one else could hear. The woman, Serafina, it had to be Serafina despite the white hair and the glowing marks on her skin and the aura of wrongness that surrounded her, continued forward alone. She stopped 10 feet from the main gate and looked directly at the watchtower, directly at Riker. Even across the distance he could see her eyes. They'd been green before, soft forest green that reminded him of spring growth. Now they glowed silver-white, matching her wolves, with nothing soft about them at all. Alpha Gary of the North Pine Pack, her voice rang out clear and cold as winter wind. Not loud, but carrying somehow, reaching every ear. I request parley under Moon Law. I come in peace to discuss matters of territory and treaty. Gary glanced at Riker, confusion written across his face. She called me Alpha. Because I'm not, Riker thought bitterly. Not anymore. He'd stepped down 3 years ago after the disaster with the eastern borders, after his decisions had cost the pack 12 good wolves. Gary had taken the circlet, taken the responsibility, taken the weight of leadership, and done a better job than Riker ever had. Should I respond? Gary asked quietly. Riker should tell him yes. Should let Gary handle this as Alpha. Should step back and let protocol take its course. But he was already moving, already descending the stairs, his wolf howling inside him with emotions he couldn't name. Grief, rage, disbelief, and underneath it all, something that felt horribly like hope. She was alive. He'd left her to die, and she was alive. Riker, wait! Gary called after him, but Riker was already crossing the courtyard, warriors parting before him. All of them staring at the impossible woman at their gates. He reached the gate and gripped the bars, looking out at her. Up close, the changes were even more pronounced. Her skin bore markings like frost patterns, pale silver lines that traced across her cheekbones, down her neck, disappearing beneath her armor. Her hair had gone completely white, not gray, but pure white, like fresh snow. And her eyes, those weren't human eyes anymore. The silver glow pulsed faintly with her heartbeat. But it was her face, Serafina's face, older, harder, utterly transformed, but still somehow recognizable beneath all the wrongness. "You're alive," Riker heard himself say. Stupid words, obvious words. She tilted her head, studying him like he was an interesting insect. Disappointed? No. How could he even begin to explain the tangle of emotions choking him? "I thought you were dead." "I was." Her smile never reached those glowing eyes. "Your precious blight zone killed the woman you abandoned. What walked out is something else entirely." Behind her, the massive wolves stood motionless, waiting, not even breathing heavily despite the distance they must have traveled, just standing like statues, all those silver eyes fixed on Riker with predatory focus. "What are you?" The question escaped before he could stop it. "Evolution." She stepped closer to the gate, and several of Riker's warriors raised their weapons nervously. She didn't even glance at them. 5 years in the Blight changes things, breaks them down, rebuilds them. I survived by becoming something that couldn't die there. The wolves? Mine. All of them. Connected to me in ways your primitive pack bonds could never achieve. She placed one hand on the gate, and frost spread from her touch, crystallizing across the metal. I am the Blight Pack now. Its alpha, its heart, its will made manifest. What I command, they obey. What they experience, I feel. We are one entity wearing many skins. The ice in Riker's veins had nothing to do with the frost spreading across the gate. This wasn't Serafina. Couldn't be. Serafina had been gentle, soft-spoken, afraid of her own shadow. She'd flinched when he raised his voice, apologized constantly for existing, tried so hard to be useful despite her weakness. This creature looked at him like he was prey. "What do you want?" He forced the words out steady. "What I came for." She withdrew her hand and the frost stopped spreading. "I'm here to address Alpha Gary about territorial rights. The Blight Zone and 50 miles of surrounding territory, to be exact." 50 miles. That was nearly a third of North Pine's land. "You can't just claim, can't I?" Those silver eyes fixed on him with terrible focus. "Pack law is very clear. Abandoned territory reverts to whoever can survive it. I've survived the Blight for 5 years. I've claimed it, tamed it, turned it into a home for my pack. Every wolf standing behind me was left for dead by packs like yours, the weak, the broken, the abandoned. I gave them purpose, gave them strength, gave them life." She leaned closer, and Riker caught her scent. It was wrong, all wrong. Not the warm, familiar smell of pack and mate, but something cold and sharp like ozone before a storm. "So, yes, Riker, I'm claiming what you threw away. The territory, the power, the life you said I didn't deserve." Her voice dropped to something intimate and vicious. "Tell me, was it worth it? Abandoning your mate to save your precious pack from the burden of my weakness?" Footsteps behind him. Gary had arrived, breathing hard from running down from the tower. "I'm Alpha Gary," he said formally, though his eyes kept darting to the army of nightmare wolves waiting at the border. "You requested parley?" Serafina's attention shifted from Riker, like he'd ceased to exist. The casual dismissal cut deeper than any insult. "Indeed. I propose we discuss this properly. I'll camp my pack here." She gestured to the open ground just outside the border markers. "While we negotiate terms. 3 days should be sufficient to reach an agreement." "And if we refuse?" She smiled wider. Behind her, several hundred wolves shifted in unison, a wave of movement that emphasized exactly how many of them there were. How large, how dangerous. "Then I take the territory anyway, and you lose wolves trying to stop me. Your choice, Alpha Gary, diplomacy or war." Though I should mention, her eyes found Riker again, just for a moment. "I'm very, very good at war now. 5 years is a long time to practice survival." Gary looked at Riker. The unspoken question hung between them. "What do we do?" Riker wanted to scream at her. wanted to demand explanations, apologies, wanted to know what the blight had done to her, wanted to beg forgiveness for leaving her there, wanted to grab her and make sure she was real and not some fever dream conjured by 5 years of guilt. But he had no authority here. He'd given that up. "Grant the parley," Riker said quietly. "We negotiate." Gary nodded slowly. "Very well. Serafina of the Blight Pack, was it? You may camp at the border. We'll convene a formal meeting at dawn to discuss your territorial claims. Pack law will be observed on both sides." "Acceptable." She turned to leave, then paused, looked back over her shoulder directly at Riker. "Oh, and Riker, that thing you left bleeding in the woods 5 years ago, begging you not to abandon her?" She let the question hang for one terrible moment. "She sends her regards." Then she walked away, her pack flowing around her like a living tide, and Riker stood gripping the frozen gate while his world shattered and reformed into something he no longer recognized. Behind him, Gary was already barking orders: double the guards, send riders to allied packs for advice, convene the council at first light. The pack scrambled into motion, preparing for the political battle ahead, but Riker couldn't move, could only watch Serafina's white hair disappear into the camp her wolves were establishing with eerie efficiency. Tents rising in perfect formation, fires lit in synchronized precision, not a single wasted movement. She was alive, she was powerful, she was terrifying, and she looked at him like he was nothing. Somewhere deep in his chest, where the mate bond had been before he'd severed it, something twisted painfully, a phantom ache for a connection that no longer existed. He'd thrown her away to save the pack from weakness, and she'd come back strong enough to destroy them all. "Riker?" A young warrior approached hesitantly. "Alpha Gary wants you in the council meeting." Riker let go of the gate. The frost from Serafina's touch had spread across the entire surface, delicate and beautiful, and utterly unnatural. "Tell him I'll be there," he said. But as he walked toward the council hall, he couldn't shake the feeling that whatever happened in that meeting, whatever negotiations took place, whatever treaties were signed or wars declared, none of it would matter. Because the woman he'd abandoned had come back as something that couldn't be reasoned with, couldn't be threatened, couldn't be anything except exactly what she'd become. A queen standing at the head of an army, and he was just the fool who'd thrown away his crown. The council chamber filled with tense, frightened wolves, elders who'd seen 3 generations of North Pine leadership, warriors who'd fought in a dozen territorial disputes. Gary at the head of the table, already looking exhausted, and Riker, sitting in the corner where former alphas belonged, close enough to advise, far enough to remember his place. "The question before us," Gary began, "is whether we have any legal grounds to refuse her claim." Elder Torin, ancient and weathered, shook his head slowly. "Pack law is clear. Territory abandoned by a pack can be claimed by whoever survives it. If she's lived in the Blight Zone for 5 years..." He trailed off, the impossibility of that statement hanging in the air. "She can't have," Councillor Breck insisted. "Nothing survives the Blight. This has to be a trick, an illusion, something." "Did those wolves look like an illusion to you?" Gary snapped. "Did the frost on our gate feel fake?" Silence. "We need to know what we're dealing with," another counselor said. "What she is, what those wolves are, how she survived, what she wants beyond territory." All eyes turned to Riker. He'd known this was coming. Of course they'd look to him. He was the only one who'd known her before, the only one who might have insight into what she'd become. "I don't know," he admitted. The words tasted like ash. "The woman I knew she was weak, gentle. She could barely defend herself in a simple sparring match. She had no combat skills, no political cunning, no survival instincts. That's why He couldn't finish. "Why you left her to die in the Blight," Breck finished coldly. "For the good of the pack. Yes, we remember." The reminder stung worse because it was exactly what Riker had told himself for 5 years. Every night he'd lain awake remembering her screams. Every morning he'd convinced himself it had been necessary. "Whatever she was," Riker continued, "she isn't anymore. The blight changed her, made her into something else. Something dangerous, Gary said. Something powerful, Riker corrected. There's a difference. Is there? Gary leaned forward. Riker, I need your honest assessment. Can we fight her if it comes to that? Could they? Riker thought of those hundreds of massive wolves moving in perfect synchronization. Thought of the casual way Serafina had demonstrated her power, the frost spreading at her touch. Thought of the predatory certainty in her eyes. No, he said quietly. We'd lose. Badly. The council erupted in protests, but Gary raised his hand for silence. Then we negotiate, the Alpha said firmly. We give her the territory she's claiming. It's half dead from the blight anyway. And we establish a peaceful border. Perhaps even a trade agreement, if she's amenable. You want to reward her for threatening us? Breck demanded. I want to keep this pack alive, Gary shot back. Pride doesn't matter if we're all dead. More arguing, more debate. But Riker had stopped listening. Because through the window, he could see the blight pack's camp. Could see Serafina moving among her wolves, and even from this distance, even through walls and glass, he swore he could feel her awareness, like she knew he was watching, like she wanted him to watch, like every moment he spent seeing what she'd become was another piece of revenge extracted. Riker. He turned. Gary had called a recess. Most of the council had left. Only his beta remained. You need to talk to her, Gary said. Privately, before the formal negotiations. She won't. She will. She came here for this. For you to see her like this. Gary's eyes were sympathetic but firm. Whatever she wants, it's personal. So make it personal. Find out what it'll take to end this without bloodshed. Riker looked back out the window at the impossible woman who'd once been his mate. And if what she wants is to watch me suffer. Gary put a hand on his shoulder. Then suffer well, old friend, for the pack. The words Riker had lived by for so long. For the pack. Always for the pack. Even when it meant walking into the camp of the woman he'd condemned to death and facing whatever punishment she'd spent 5 years planning.
He'd thrown her away to save the pack from weakness, and she'd come back strong enough to destroy them all. If you're already hooked on Serafina's revenge and need to see what happens when Riker walks into her camp alone, smash that like button right now. Chapter 2 is where things get really dangerous.
Chapter 2, The Ghost in the Woods. Riker approached the Blight Pack's camp as the moon reached its zenith. He'd changed out of his formal council attire into simple traveling leathers. No weapons. Bringing blades into a parley camp would be an insult. No guards, Gary had offered, but Riker refused. This conversation needed to happen alone. The camp was like nothing he'd ever seen. Tents arranged in perfect geometric patterns, creating symbols he didn't recognize. Fires burning with flames that flickered silver instead of orange. And the wolves, dozens of them, sitting motionless around the perimeter like living statues. Their glowing eyes tracked his every movement. Not one of them made a sound. No growls, no warning barks, just silent, perfect vigilance. It was deeply, profoundly wrong. A figure emerged from the largest tent at the center of the camp. Not Serafina, but a massive wolf in human form. Male, towering at least 7 feet, with the same silver-marked fur and glowing eyes as the others. He wore minimal clothing, just leather pants and a chest harness bristling with weapons. "Former Alpha Riker," the man said. His voice had an odd quality, as if multiple voices spoke in unison. "The Revenant will see you now." The Revenant. So that's what they called her. "I didn't catch your name," Riker said, trying to keep his voice steady. The man smiled, showing too many teeth. "I am Cade, first of the Reborn, the Revenant's second in command." He gestured toward the central tent. "She's been expecting you. We've all been expecting you." That last sentence carried weight Riker didn't understand. He followed Cade through the camp, acutely aware of dozens of eyes watching him. The wolves didn't move, didn't react, but he could feel their attention like pressure against his skin. They reached the tent. Cade pulled back the entrance flap. "Try not to bleed on the carpets," Cade said pleasantly. "The Revenant dislikes messes." Before Riker could respond, Cade was gone, melting back into the camp with unnatural silence. Riker ducked inside. The tent's interior was larger than it should be, lit by those strange silver flames in ornate braziers. Furs covered the ground, not wolf pelts, but something else, something that shimmered oddly in the light. Maps covered one wall, showing territories far beyond North Pine, battle plans maybe, or conquest routes. And there, seated in a high-backed chair that looked more like a throne, was Seraphina. She'd removed her armor. Now she wore a simple black dress that left her arms bare, showing the full extent of the frostmark patterns covering her skin. They weren't tattoos, they pulsed faintly, like veins carrying light instead of blood. Her white hair was unbound, cascading over her shoulders. In the silver firelight, she looked ethereal, beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with human beauty and everything to do with predatory perfection. She was reading a leather-bound book. She didn't look up when he entered. "Sit," she said, gesturing to a cushion on the floor in front of her chair. Not a chair for him. A cushion, on the floor, at her feet. The power play was obvious and deliberate. Riker sat. She continued reading for another full minute, letting him wait, letting him feel small. Finally, she closed the book with a soft snap. "Do you know what this is?" She held up the book. "No." "It's a journal, my journal, from before." Those silver eyes fixed on him. "I kept it during our mating, wrote in it every night. Want to know what I wrote about?" Riker's throat was dry. "What?" "Hope." Her smile was razors. Page after page of pathetic, desperate hope. Today Riker smiled at me. Maybe he's starting to accept the bond. Today I successfully hunted a rabbit. Maybe I'm getting stronger. Today he didn't flinch when I touched him. Maybe he's learning to love me. She opened the book to a random page and read aloud, her voice dripping with mockery. "I know I'm not what he wanted in a mate. I know the pack thinks I'm weak, but I'll prove myself. I'll become strong enough that he'll be proud to call me his. I'll make him love me." She snapped the book shut again. "I was so stupid." "Seraphina. That's not my name anymore." Her voice could freeze blood. "Seraphina died in the Blight. I'm called the Revenant now, because I came back from death. Or you can call me Alpha, if you prefer proper titles." "Alpha," he corrected carefully. "I came to talk about— I know why you came. Gary sent you to negotiate, to use our old connection to manipulate me into accepting less territory." She leaned forward. "Did you really think that would work? That I'd see your face and remember the love I used to feel?" "No, Good, because I don't feel anything when I look at you." She said it so casually, like commenting on the weather. The Blight burned all of that out of me. Love, compassion, mercy, all those soft emotions that made Seraphina weak. Gone. What's left is pure, focused will. She stood, moving with liquid grace, and circled around him. He forced himself not to turn, not to track her movement. "Do you want to know what happened?" she asked from behind him. "That night you left me?" "Yes," he whispered. "Too bad. You don't deserve the full story." She came back into view, standing over him now. "But I'll give you pieces, little glimpses, just enough to make sure you never sleep well again." The forest was dark, and Seraphina was bleeding. The rejection wounds burned like acid across her chest, her arms, her legs. Every place where the severed mate bond had torn through her skin. The pain was beyond anything she'd imagined possible. "Please, Riker!" She'd fallen to her knees, barely able to see through tears and agony. "Please don't leave me here. I can get stronger. I can be what you need. Just give me another chance." He'd looked down at her with something that might have been pity, might have been disgust. "You're a liability, Seraphina. Every hunt you slow us down, every battle you hide, every council meeting you sit silent because you have nothing to contribute." His voice was firm, final. The pack can't carry dead weight, and that's all you are." "The baby," she'd gasped out, one hand on her barely showing stomach. "Our baby." "There is no baby." Flat. Cold. "There's a mistake that won't survive anyway. Better it dies here than draining pack resources for months before the inevitable." He'd turned and walked away. She'd screamed his name until her voice gave out. Then she'd crawled deeper into the blight zone, because even dying alone seemed better than watching him disappear. The first night, she'd found a cave, collapsed inside. Certain death would come quickly. But death didn't come. The blight did. It started as whispers in the dark, voices that weren't quite voices, speaking words that weren't quite words. The cave walls began to shimmer with that sickly silver light. And then the pain started, not the burning of rejection wounds. This was different. This was her body being unmade and remade, cell by cell. Her bones cracking and reforming, her blood turning cold and viscous, her hair bleaching white as the color drained into the cave floor. She'd screamed until she had no voice left, and through it all, the blight whispered its question. "What do you want to become?" She'd answered with the last shred of herself that remained. "Strong. Strong enough that no one can ever throw me away again. Strong enough that men like him kneel. Strong enough that I never, ever feel this weak again." The blight had laughed. If an ancient, corrupted magic could laugh. "So be it, little Omega. Strength you shall have, but strength demands sacrifice. Are you willing to pay?" "Anything," she'd gasped. "Take anything, everything. I don't care." "Then let us begin." Seraphina's voice pulled Riker back from the vision she'd somehow projected into his mind. Shared memory, maybe, or just her words painting such vivid pictures he could see them. "I stayed in that cave for 3 weeks while the blight transformed me," she continued. "Do you know what it's like to feel your humanity being stripped away piece by piece? To feel emotions dying inside you like flowers in frost?" Riker couldn't speak. "On the 21st day, I walked out of that cave, and I wasn't Seraphina anymore." She crouched down, bringing herself eye level with him. "The first thing I saw was a wolf, male, injured, dying. He'd been cast out by his pack for weakness, left to die in the blight just like I was." Her smile was terrible. "I offered him a choice, die alone or live as part of something greater. He chose life. I pressed my hand to his forehead, and the blight flowed through me into him, transformed him, bound him to me." Cade, Riker realized. Cade, my first, my most loyal. He was the beginning of my pack. She stood again, pacing. "Over 5 years I found them. All the wolves your kind threw away. The weak, the scarred, the broken, the abandoned. I gave them strength, purpose, connection. A hive mind bond that makes your primitive pack bonds look like children playing pretend." She turned back to him, and her eyes were blazing with silver light. "I built an army from the wolves you discarded, and now I'm going to use that army to take everything from packs like yours, starting with North Pine. You said you came for territory. I lied." She laughed, cold and sharp. "Well, partially lied. I do want the territory, but that's not why I'm really here." Riker's heart hammered. "Then why?" She leaned down, close enough that he could feel the unnatural cold radiating from her skin. "I came to watch you lose everything the way I did. Your land, your pack, your status, your pride. I'm going to strip it all away piece by piece. And you're going to watch helplessly while it happens. The Council is terrified. They'll give me whatever I want to avoid war." She straightened. "But that's too easy, too quick. I want you to suffer properly. So here's what's going to happen." She walked to her throne chair and sat, crossing her legs elegantly. "Tomorrow at the formal negotiations, I'm going to demand the 50 miles of territory I mentioned. Gary will try to negotiate down. I'll refuse. He'll grant it because he has no choice. And then? And then in 2 weeks I'll return. I'll demand another strip of territory. Then another, slowly carving away at North Pine until there's nothing left but your pathetic central den. Pack law won't allow. Pack law allows me to claim any territory I can hold. And I can hold all of it. Her smile widened. But here's the beautiful part. I'm going to offer an alternative. Riker waited, dread pooling in his stomach. A challenge. Single combat. You versus me. Winner takes all the disputed territory. I'm not the alpha anymore. I can't. Oh, but you can. Pack law allows any pack member to fight on behalf of their alpha in territorial disputes. Gary will nominate you because you're still the strongest fighter North Pine has. You won't be able to refuse without looking like a coward. She leaned forward, eyes glittering with malicious joy. And then I'm going to break you in front of your entire pack. Not kill you. That would be mercy. I'm going to hurt you in ways that heal wrong, leave you crippled. A living reminder of what happens to alphas who throw away their mates. Riker's wolf snarled inside him, desperate and furious, but he kept his voice level. You've thought this through. I've had 5 years to plan this. 5 years of survival and transformation and building power, all leading to this moment. She stood and walked to him, placing one cold hand on his cheek. You're going to lose everything, Riker, and then you're going to live with that loss for the rest of your miserable life. Her touch burned with cold. Frost spread from her fingers across his skin. That's my revenge, not quick death, not even quick defeat. Slow, methodical destruction of everything you value, until you're as broken as I was in that cave. She removed her hand. The frost melted, leaving his skin red and aching. Now get out of my camp. We have negotiations tomorrow, and I want you well rested. I need you sharp enough to truly understand what you're losing. Riker stood on shaking legs. Every instinct screamed at him to fight, to argue, to do something. But what could he do? She held all the power here. He walked to the tent entrance, then paused. The baby, he heard himself say. What happened to the baby? Silence stretched behind him. When she finally spoke, her voice was different, quieter, almost human. The baby died. The blight killed it during the transformation. That was part of the price I paid. Something in her tone made him turn. For just a moment, her mask slipped. He saw grief there, raw and terrible, before it vanished behind silver light and cold fury. That was your child too, she continued, voice hardening again. The one you called a mistake. The one you said would die anyway. You were right about that, at least. It died because you left us in the blight. The guilt hit like a physical blow. If you say you're sorry, I'll kill you where you stand. Her hand moved to a blade at her hip. Sorry means nothing. Sorry doesn't bring back what was lost. Sorry doesn't undo 5 years of suffering. She turned away from him, dismissing him. Leave, before I forget why I'm keeping you alive. Riker left. He walked through the silent camp, past the watching wolves, past Cade, who smiled knowingly, past the border markers, into North Pine territory. He made it 50 feet before his legs gave out. He collapsed against a tree, shaking, the full weight of what he'd done finally, truly hitting him. He'd killed their child. Not directly, but his actions had led to that death as surely as if he'd done it with his own hands. And Seraphina, the Revenant, was going to make him pay for it in the slowest, most painful way possible. Gary found him there an hour later, still sitting against the tree. How did it go? His friend asked quietly. Riker looked up at him with hollow eyes. We're going to lose everything, he said, and there's nothing we can do to stop it. Chapter 3. The Blight Pack. Dawn came too quickly. Riker hadn't slept. He'd sat in his quarters staring at the wall, replaying Seraphina's words over and over. The baby, their baby, dead because of him. He'd known she was pregnant when he left her, had convinced himself it was better this way. Better the child die quickly in the blight than grow up weak like its mother, dragging down the pack. He'd been a monster. A knock at his door pulled him from his thoughts. It's time, Gary called. The negotiations start in an hour. You need to be there. Riker stood, his body moving on autopilot. He dressed in formal council attire, dark furs, the silver clasps that marked him as former Alpha. Once, these clothes had made him feel powerful. Now they felt like a costume. The Great Hall was already filling when he arrived. Not just North Pine wolves, but representatives from neighboring packs. Word had spread fast. The Blight Pack's arrival was news that rippled through pack politics like a stone in still water. Alpha Tauren of the Shadowcrest pack had arrived with a full entourage. Riker spotted him near the head table, his scarred face set in grim lines. Beside him stood his son, Kale, a warrior of impressive reputation who'd been making eyes at the eligible females of several packs for the past year. "Riker," Tauren greeted him with a nod. "I heard rumors. Couldn't believe them until I saw that camp outside your borders with my own eyes." "They're real," Riker said flatly. "The scouts say she's claiming Blight territory, that she survived there for 5 years." Tauren's eyes were sharp. "How is that possible?" "I don't know. The scouts also say," Tauren lowered his voice, "that she was your mate, the one you banished." Of course they knew. Pack politics thrived on gossip. "Yes." Tauren studied him for a long moment. "Then you have my sympathies, and my curiosity. What did the Blight do to her?" "Made her strong enough to destroy us all." Before Tauren could respond, a ripple of sound moved through the hall. Conversations died, warriors straightened, every head turned toward the entrance. She'd arrived. Seraphina walked into the great hall like she owned it. She donned her armor again, that black leather that seemed to drink light. Her white hair was bound in an intricate braid that left her face stark and beautiful. The frost marks on her skin seemed to glow brighter in the hall's torchlight. Behind her walked Cade and 5 other wolves, all bearing the same silver-eyed marks of the Blight Pack. They moved in perfect synchronization, their footsteps falling at exactly the same moment. The effect was profoundly unsettling. Conversations didn't just die. They were murdered. The hall fell into absolute silence as Seraphina walked to the negotiation table. She didn't look left or right, didn't acknowledge the stares, simply walked with the absolute confidence of something that knew it was the most dangerous presence in the room. She sat across from Gary. Her wolves arranged themselves behind her in a precise formation. "Alpha Gary," she said, her voice carrying easily through the silent hall. "Shall we begin?" Gary cleared his throat. "Before we start formal negotiations, I think introductions are in order. You've brought guests, not guests, my pack." She gestured to the wolves behind her. "You've met Cade, my second. The others are Vera, Ash, Thorn, Frost, and Ember, the first 6, the ones I transformed personally in those early days." One by one, the wolves inclined their heads. Not bows, acknowledgments, like royalty greeting commoners. "And you've brought observers," Seraphina continued, looking at Tauren. "Alpha Tauren of Shadowcrest. I've heard of you. They say your pack is strong, your warriors fierce." "They say truly," Tauren replied carefully. "Good. Then you'll understand strength when you see it." Her smile was cold. "Perhaps we can discuss trade agreements after I've concluded business here." It was a power play, treating Tauren as a potential ally while Gary was still negotiating, implying that North Pine's defeat was inevitable and she was already looking to her next political moves. Gary's jaw tightened. "Let's focus on the matter at hand. You're claiming 50 miles of territory, extending from the Blight Zone southward into what has traditionally been North Pine land." "Correct. That's nearly a third of our territory." "Correct. It's also land that's been in North Pine possession for 7 generations." Seraphina leaned back in her chair. It was in North Pine possession. You abandoned it when the Blight spread. Your scouts stopped patrolling it 3 years ago. Your hunters haven't taken game from it in 4. By pack law, abandoned territory can be claimed by whoever can hold it. "We didn't abandon it," Gary countered. "We strategically withdrew from a contaminated zone. Call it what you like. The result is the same. You left. I claimed it. It's mine now. Elder Torin rose from the council seats. If I may speak, Alpha Gary? Gary nodded. The old wolf addressed Seraphina directly. Young Alpha, pack law does indeed allow for territorial claims on abandoned land. However, there are provisions. The claiming pack must demonstrate they can hold and utilize the territory. The blight zone is, by all accounts, uninhabitable, dead. How can you claim to hold land that kills everything that enters it? Seraphina's smile widened. An excellent question, Elder. Cade? Her second-in-command stepped forward. The blight zone is no longer uninhabitable, not for us. Our pack has lived there for 5 years. We've built structures, established hunting grounds, created a sustainable territory. Impossible, someone muttered from the crowd. We have scouts who can verify, Gary began. Send them, Seraphina interrupted. Send your scouts into the blight. Let them see what we've built. But I warn you, they'll need my permission to pass the border. The blight responds to me now. Any wolf who enters without my blessing will face its full wrath. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Riker felt ice forming in his stomach. She wasn't just claiming to survive the blight. She was claiming to control it. You're saying you command the corruption itself? Gary asked incredulously. I'm saying the blight and I came to an understanding. It transformed me. In return, I serve as its avatar in the physical world. My pack is extension of its will. The territory we claim isn't just land. It's an expansion of the blight's domain. The hall erupted. Wolves shouted over each other. Warriors reached for weapons. The council members argued loudly about whether this was even possible. Torin's entourage looked genuinely frightened. Gary slammed his hand on the table. Order! We will have order in this hall! Slowly, the chaos subsided. If what you're saying is true, Gary said carefully, then you're not just claiming territory, you're threatening to spread corruption into our lands. Only if you resist, Seraphina said pleasantly. The blight grows where I command it to grow. Give me the territory I'm claiming, and it will stabilize at those borders. Refuse, and... She shrugged delicately. Well, the blight has a mind of its own. It might decide to spread further. I can't control everything it does. It was a threat, barely veiled. Give her what she wanted, or watch the corruption consume their lands. This is extortion, Breck snarled from the council seats. This is negotiation, Seraphina corrected. I'm offering you a choice. Surrender the territory peacefully or lose it, and more, to the blight's advance. I think I'm being quite reasonable. Reasonable? Breck stood, shaking with rage. You're threatening to unleash a magical plague on... Counselor Breck. Seraphina's voice cut like a blade through ice. I remember you. You were at the council meeting 5 years ago, the one where you argued most strongly for my banishment. You called me dead weight that would poison the pack from within. Breck went pale. Turns out you were right. I am poison, but not the kind you expected. She stood, and the temperature in the hall dropped noticeably. I'm the poison that punishes packs who throw away their so-called weak, who abandon their own to die in cursed lands, who value strength over mercy. Frost began spreading across the stone floor, radiating from where she stood. 5 years ago, this pack sentenced me to death for the crime of being insufficiently vicious. Well, I learned viciousness in the blight, learned it so well that I came back to teach all of you the lesson. And what lesson is that? Gary asked quietly. That weakness and strength are not what you think they are. That the wolves you discard might come back stronger than you can imagine. That mercy is not optional. It's survival insurance. She placed both hands on the table. Ice spread from her touch, covering the entire surface in crystalline frost. Every wolf in my pack was abandoned by packs like yours, left to die for being too small, too scarred, too old, too different. I gave them purpose, power, a family that doesn't measure worth by how many enemies you've killed. One of her wolves, Vera, the female with white fur, stepped forward. I was left in the blight because I refused to kill my own sister in a dominance challenge. My pack called me weak. The Revenant called me loyal. Another wolf, Ash, massive and dark-furred, spoke next. I was abandoned because injury made me limp. My alpha said cripples had no place in the pack. The Revenant healed me and gave me strength beyond anything I'd known. One by one, the first 6 told their stories. Abandoned, discarded, left to die. And one by one, they'd been found by Serafina and transformed into something new. The hall listened in growing horror, because every pack represented here had done the same thing at some point. Cast out the weak. Abandoned the wounded, prioritized strength over compassion, and now those discarded wolves had returned as an army. You're building a pack of outcasts, Torin observed. Rebels against the natural order. I'm building a pack of survivors, Serafina corrected. And we're going to replace your natural order with something better. One territory at a time, one pack at a time. She looked directly at Riker then. The first time she'd acknowledged his presence since entering the hall. Starting with the pack that taught me this lesson most thoroughly. The weight of her gaze was crushing. Riker forced himself not to look away, even though every instinct screamed to flee. I propose an alternative to simple territorial surrender, Serafina announced, still holding Riker's gaze. A challenge, single combat, your champion against mine. Winner takes the disputed territory. Here it was, the trap she'd warned him about. We accept, Gary said immediately. You might want to hear my terms first, Serafina said mildly. If my champion wins, I take the 50 miles of territory with no further dispute. If yours wins, I withdraw all claims and leave North Pine Lands entirely. That seems fair, Gary said cautiously. It does, doesn't it? Her smile was predatory. I propose the challenge take place in 3 days. That gives both sides time to prepare. The combat will be fought in traditional form, shifted, claws and teeth, until one party yields or dies. Agreed, Gary said. Excellent. Then there's just one more detail. Serafina's eyes glittered with malicious joy. I choose my champion now, and I choose myself. Shocked silence. You intend to fight personally? Gary asked. I do. After all, this is my claim, my pack, my cause. It's only fitting I defend it myself. She tilted her head. Unless you think I'm too weak for combat? That would be ironic, don't you think, Riker? All eyes turned to him. Gary looked at Riker questioningly. The unspoken question was clear. Can you beat her? Could he? 5 years ago, yes, absolutely. Serafina had been helpless in a fight, couldn't land a blow, couldn't defend herself worth a damn. But that was 5 years ago. Before the blight. Before the transformation. Now? Looking at her standing there wreathed in frost and power, eyes glowing with inhuman light, he had no idea. I'll fight her, Riker heard himself say. Riker, no, Gary began. I'll fight her, Riker repeated, standing. As North Pine's champion. Serafina's smile was terrible and beautiful. Perfect. Then it settled. 3 days from now, at dawn, in the clearing between our camps, Riker versus the Revenant. All disputes to be settled by the outcome. She turned to leave, her wolves falling into formation behind her. Oh, and Riker? She paused at the doorway. I hope you spend these 3 days making peace with your gods. You're going to need their mercy, because you'll get none from me. Then she was gone, her pack flowing out behind her like a tide of silver-eyed shadows. The hall exploded into chaos the moment she left. Warriors arguing about whether the challenge was wise, council members debating the legal implications, Torin and his wolves discussing what this meant for regional pack politics. But Riker heard none of it. Because he'd just agreed to fight the woman he'd left to die, the woman who'd survived by becoming something monstrous, the woman who'd spent 5 years planning his destruction. And he had 3 days to figure out how to beat her, or how to survive losing. Gary found him later in the training yard, beating his fists bloody against a practice dummy. You can't win this fight, Gary said bluntly. I know. She's going to destroy you. I know. Then why did you agree? Riker stopped hitting the dummy. His knuckles were split, bleeding. He watched the blood drip onto the ground. Because I deserve it, he said quietly. Everything she's going to do to me, I deserve it. I killed our child, Gary, left her pregnant in the Blight, and our baby died because of it. Gary was silent for a long moment. Even if you deserve it, he finally said, the Pact doesn't. If you lose, we lose a third of our territory, resources, hunting grounds, safety. You should have chosen a different champion. There is no different champion. You're the strongest fighter we have. Even after stepping down, even after 3 years of guilt and self-destruction, you're still the best we've got. Gary grabbed his shoulder, forcing Riker to look at him. So stop hitting practice dummies and start training to actually win. How do I fight something that controls the Blight itself? You figure out her weaknesses. Every fighter has them. Gary squeezed his shoulder once, then let go. And you stop thinking of her as your mate. She's not. She's the Revenant. She's your enemy. And you fight enemies to win, not to atone. Gary left. Riker stood alone in the training yard as the sun set, painting the sky blood red. 3 days. 3 days to prepare for a fight he probably couldn't win. 3 days before Serafina made good on her promise to break him in front of everyone he'd ever known. He looked toward the Blight Pack's camp in the distance, could see their silver fires burning, could feel, even from here, the wrongness that surrounded them. And somewhere in that camp, Serafina was probably smiling, knowing that no matter what happened in 3 days, she'd already won. Because even if he somehow beat her in combat, he'd still have to live with what he'd done. And that was a fight he'd been losing for 5 years. That night, Riker dreamed of the cave. He saw Serafina there, young and terrified, her body racked with transformation, saw her screaming as the Blight unmade her, saw the exact moment their child died inside her, a small light extinguishing, saw the moment she stopped screaming and started accepting, the moment she chose strength over death, the moment the gentle Omega he'd known burned away completely, leaving only the Revenant behind. He woke gasping, drenched in sweat. 2 more days. Chapter 4. The Price of Weakness. Day 1 before the challenge. Riker woke to find Lydia packing. His mate, his current mate, the one he'd chosen 3 years after Serafina, the one who was everything an alpha mate should be, was methodically folding clothes into a travel bag. "What are you doing?" he asked, though part of him already knew. Lydia didn't look at him. She was beautiful in the morning light, her dark hair cascading over strong shoulders, her body lean with warrior's muscle. Everything Serafina hadn't been, everything he'd told himself he wanted. "Leaving," she said simply. "Going to stay with my sister's pack until this is resolved." "Lydia, don't." She finally turned to face him. Her eyes were sad, but resolute. "Don't ask me to stay and watch you throw yourself at her feet." "I'm fighting for the Pack's territory." "You're fighting for absolution." Lydia crossed her arms. "I've watched you for 3 years, Riker. Watched you torture yourself with guilt over her. And I told myself it would get better. That eventually you'd heal and actually be present in our mating." She laughed bitterly. "Then she shows up and I see the way you look at her. Like she's the only real thing in the world and the rest of us are just shadows." "That's not—" "Yes, it is." Lydia picked up her bag. "I'm strong, Riker. Stronger than she ever was. I can fight, hunt, lead. I've been a perfect alpha mate by every measure, but I'm not her, and I never will be. I don't want you to be her. Don't you?" Lydia moved to the door. "Because from where I'm standing, you've been in love with a ghost for 5 years, and now that ghost is back and more powerful than any of us, and you're walking into an unwinnable fight just to be close to her again. She's going to cripple me, maybe kill me." "I know." Lydia's voice softened slightly. "And part of you wants that, wants the punishment, wants her to hurt you, because at least then she's touching you, acknowledging you, making you feel something besides the numbness you've lived with. The accuracy of her words hit like a physical blow. "I'm sorry," Riker said quietly. "I know you are. You're always sorry." She opened the door. "But sorry isn't enough. It never was. Good luck in the fight, Riker. I hope you survive. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, but I won't be here when you do." She left. Riker sat in the empty room and felt nothing, which proved Lydia's point more effectively than any argument. An hour later, Gary found him in the armory. "Lydia's gone," Gary said. It wasn't a question. "Yes. Can you blame her?" "No." Gary leaned against the weapons rack. "The scouts came back from the Blight Zone. You need to hear their report." "Tell me." "They made it about half a mile in before the corruption hit them. Said it felt like drowning in ice, like the air itself was trying to kill them. They would have died if one of Serafina's wolves hadn't found them and escorted them deeper." "What did they see?" Gary's expression was grim. "A city, Riker. Not tents or camps. An actual city built into the dead forest. Structures made from blight-twisted wood that somehow holds without rotting. Streets laid out in perfect geometric patterns, and wolves, dozens more than we saw at the negotiations. Maybe hundreds." Riker's stomach dropped. "How many total?" "The scouts estimated 200 minimum. Could be more. They weren't allowed to explore freely." Gary pulled out a piece of parchment. "They drew this." The sketch showed a sprawling settlement centered around a massive structure that looked like a palace carved from white wood and ice. Smaller buildings radiated outward in precise circles, and everywhere those silver lights burning. "She's not just surviving the blight," Riker said slowly. "She's built a kingdom in it. A kingdom of outcasts and rejects that's more organized than most established packs." Gary set down the sketch. "The scouts said something else. The wolves there are happy, not controlled or enslaved, but genuinely loyal. They worship her, Riker. Call her the Revenant, the Reborn, the Mother of Outcasts. A cult. Or a revolution." Gary met his eyes. "What happens if she wins this challenge and takes our territory? What happens when other abandoned wolves hear about her? When every pack's discarded members have somewhere to go, someone who'll make them strong?" Riker understood the implication. Serafina wasn't just threatening North Pine. She was threatening the entire structure of pack society. "Then I have to win," Riker said. "Can you?" "I don't know, but I have to try." He spent the rest of the day training, fought against Gary in the practice ring until they were both bloody and exhausted, shifted forms dozens of times, testing his wolf's speed and strength. Studied old combat techniques, looking for any advantage. Nothing felt like enough, because he wasn't just fighting Serafina. He was fighting whatever the blight had made her into, and he had no idea what that entity was truly capable of. As the sun set, he shifted into wolf form and ran the territory borders, needed to feel the land beneath his paws, remind himself what he was fighting for. He ended up at the northern ridge, looking out at the Blight Zone. In daylight, it looked dead. White trees like bones, gray ash ground. No movement, no life. But as darkness fell, the silver lights began to appear. First one, then dozens, then hundreds. The Blight City coming alive. And in the center, the brightest light of all. Her palace. He wondered what she was doing right now. Training? Planning? Celebrating her inevitable victory? A sound behind him made him spin. Cade stood there in human form, arms crossed, that unsettling smile on his face. "Former Alpha Riker," Cade said pleasantly, taking in the view. Riker shifted back to human form. "What do you want?" "To deliver a message. The Revenant requests your presence." "Why?" She didn't say, but when the Revenant requests, we obey. Cade's smile widened. "Unless you're afraid?" Every instinct screamed this was a trap, but Riker found himself nodding. "Lead the way." The Blight Pack's camp was different at night. Those silver fires burned brighter, casting everything in ghostly light. The wolves moved like shadows between tents, and the air itself felt alive, crackling with energy that raised the hair on Riker's arms. Cade led him to the central tent. "She's inside. Alone." Cade's expression was unreadable. "Fair warning, she's in a mood. Tread carefully." Then he was gone, leaving Riker at the entrance. Riker pushed through the flap. Serafina sat cross-legged on the floor, surrounded by candles that burned with silver flame. She wore simple training clothes, tight black pants, and a sleeveless shirt that showed her arms covered in frost marks. Her white hair was down, wild around her shoulders. She didn't look up when he entered. "Sit," she said, gesturing to the floor across from her. Riker sat. For a long moment, she said nothing, just sat there with her eyes closed, breathing slowly. The frost marks on her skin pulsed in rhythm with her heartbeat. "Do you know what I'm doing?" she finally asked. "No. I'm listening to my pack. Every wolf connected to me through the Blight bond. I can hear them. Feel them, a constant chorus of sensation and emotion." Her eyes opened, glowing softly. "Right now, Vera is hunting. I feel the excitement of the chase. Ash is sparring with Thorn. I feel the impact of each blow. Cade is standing guard outside this tent. I feel his alertness." "That sounds overwhelming." It was, at first. Now it's comfort. I'm never alone, never isolated, always connected to something larger than myself. She tilted her head. The opposite of how I felt in our mating. The barb landed perfectly. "Why did you call me here?" Riker asked. "To give you a chance." She stood in one fluid motion. "Tomorrow I'm going to destroy you in front of both our packs, but tonight I'm offering you an alternative." "What alternative?" "Submit now. Publicly acknowledge that you were wrong to abandon me. Declare in front of your pack that I'm the stronger alpha and North Pine should yield to my authority." Her eyes glittered. "Do that, and I'll call off the challenge, take my territory, and leave you in peace." "You'd give up your revenge?" "I'd get my revenge differently. Watching you grovel would be satisfaction enough." She moved closer. "You'd lose your pride, your reputation, everything that makes you who you are. But you'd keep your body intact, keep your ability to fight and hunt. And the pack would survive, diminished, humiliated, but alive." She was close enough now that he could feel the cold radiating from her skin. "It's a generous offer, Riker. More generous than you deserve." He met her silver eyes. "Why make this offer at all?" For a moment, something flickered across her face. Something almost human. "Because despite everything, some part of me remembers loving you, a very small part, buried deep beneath the blight and the transformation and 5 years of survival." Her voice softened slightly. "That part doesn't want to cripple you, doesn't want to destroy you completely. Just mostly destroy me." "Yes." She smiled without humor. "Call it a mercy. The last one you'll ever get from me." Riker thought about it, really thought about it. He could submit, save himself the physical destruction, preserve his ability to function as a warrior. All it would cost was every shred of dignity and self-respect. "No," he said quietly. Serafina's expression hardened. "No? I won't submit, won't grovel. If you want to break me, you'll have to do it in combat." He stood to face her. "I owe you that much. A real fight. Not a public surrender. You owe me everything." "I know, but I can't give you everything by choice. You'll have to take it by force." He held her gaze. "So, I'll see you tomorrow at dawn, and we'll settle this the old way." For a long moment, she stared at him. Then she laughed, cold and bitter. "You really are a fool, but at least you're a consistent fool." She turned away. "Get out. I need to prepare for tomorrow's entertainment." "Serafina." That's not my name." She didn't look back. "That woman died screaming in a cave while you slept comfortably in your den. I'm the Revenant, and tomorrow I'm going to teach you what that means." Riker left. As he walked back through the camp, he felt eyes watching him. Every wolf knew about the offer. Every wolf knew he'd refused. Cade materialized beside him at the border. "You refused her mercy," Cade observed. "Yes. Why?" Riker stopped, looking back at the Blightpack's camp, at the silver lights and shadow wolves, and the tent where Seraphina sat, planning his destruction. "Because she deserves the satisfaction of beating me in a real fight, not watching me crawl." He met Cade's strange eyes. "And because some part of me still believes she's Seraphina underneath all that ice, and Seraphina would hate herself for accepting my surrender without making me prove I'd changed." Cade studied him for a long moment, then surprisingly nodded. "You might be less of a fool than she thinks. Might." He gestured toward North Pine territory. "Now go, rest if you can. Tomorrow's going to hurt." Day 2, before the challenge. Riker woke to find Gary in his room with a visitor. A woman in healer's robes, elderly, her hands gnarled with age but her eyes sharp. "This is Mara," Gary said, "the best healer in 4 territories. I asked her to examine you, make sure you're in peak condition for tomorrow." The old woman approached, her hands glowing faintly with healing magic as she pressed them to Riker's chest. "Physically, you're strong," Mara said after a moment. "In your prime, fast, powerful, good instincts." She frowned. "But emotionally? You're shattered. Guilt is eating you from the inside. That will slow you down, make you hesitate." "Can you fix it?" Gary asked. "Emotions aren't injuries I can heal." Mara removed her hands. "But I can give you something to dull the pain temporarily, let you fight without the guilt weighing on you." She pulled out a vial of silver liquid. 1 dose. "It'll suppress your emotional responses for about 2 hours, long enough for the combat." Riker stared at the vial. "You want me to fight without feeling anything?" "I want you to fight without guilt slowing your strikes," Mara corrected. "The Revenant will show you no mercy. You can't afford to show yourself any either." He took the vial but didn't drink it. Not yet. After Mara left, Gary sat down heavily. "Torin wants to meet with you," Gary said. "He's still here, watching, waiting to see how this plays out." "Why does he care?" "Because if you lose, every pack in the region needs to reassess their relationship with the Blight Pack. Torin wants to know if he should start preparing alliance offers or defenses." "Politics. Always politics." "Send him in," Riker said. Alpha Torin arrived with his son Kale. Riker had met Kale before at various pack gatherings. The young Alpha in training was impressive, tall, powerful, skilled in combat. Exactly the kind of wolf Seraphina should have had as a mate, instead of Riker. The thought tasted bitter. "Riker," Torin greeted him. "I wanted to speak before tomorrow's challenge." "About what?" "About what comes after." Torin sat uninvited. "If you win, North Pine maintains its territory and the Blight Pack withdraws. But if you lose? Then Seraphina takes 1/3 of our land. And then she'll come for more," Torin said bluntly. "You understand that, don't you? This challenge is just the beginning. She's building something larger than one pack's territory dispute." "A revolution," Riker said, remembering Gary's words. "Exactly. A complete restructuring of how packs operate. No more abandoning the weak. No more exile for the different. She's offering every outcast a home." Torin leaned forward. "That's dangerous for packs like mine, who maintain order through strict hierarchies." "So you want me to win to preserve the status quo?" "I want you to win because the alternative terrifies me." Torin's expression was grim, "But I'm also pragmatic. If you lose, I need to know, will the Blight Pack be open to alliances, trade agreements, or is she planning to conquer everyone? Ask her yourself." "I intend to." Torin stood. But I wanted to gauge your thoughts first. You knew her before the transformation. The woman I knew doesn't exist anymore. Doesn't she? Kael spoke for the first time. His voice was thoughtful. I've watched her during the negotiations, studied her body language, her word choices. There's calculation there, yes, but also pain, rage, grief. Those are very human emotions. What's your point? Riker asked. That maybe the Revenant isn't as inhuman as she wants everyone to believe. Maybe Seraphina is still in there, buried but present. Kael's eyes were intelligent, which means she can still be reached, still be reasoned with. Or it means she's even more dangerous, Torin countered. Human emotions combined with supernatural power? That's a volatile mix. Father and son left, still debating. Riker sat alone with Mara's vial and too many thoughts. That afternoon, he went to the archives. The Pack's historical records were kept in a vault beneath the Great Hall. Dusty scrolls and ancient books documenting generations of Pack law, traditions, and history. He searched for anything about the Blight, found references going back centuries. The corruption had appeared before, in cycles, always in different locations, always consuming everything it touched. But one text caught his attention, a journal from 300 years ago. The Blight is not evil, though it seems so. It is transformation. It breaks down what exists and creates something new. Those who enter with hate become monsters. Those who enter with love become guardians. Those who enter with nothing become nothing. Beware the one who enters with purpose, for the Blight grants power to match will, and a strong will in the Blight becomes something the world has never seen. Riker read the passage 3 times. Seraphina had entered the Blight with purpose, with the desperate will to survive, to become strong, and the Blight had made her exactly that. Find anything useful? He turned to find Elder Torin standing in the archive entrance. Maybe, Riker said. This passage suggests the Blight responds to intent, that it shapes people based on what they bring into it. I know that text, Torin said, moving closer. It's why I argued against your banishment of Seraphina all those years ago. Riker's head snapped up. You argued against it? I was overruled. 3-1 vote in council. Torin's old eyes were sad. I told them sending a pregnant Omega to the Blight was asking for exactly what happened, that she'd either die or become something terrible. You knew this would happen? I knew it was possible. The Blight has created champions before, warriors of immense power who reshape the territories around them. Torin touched the ancient text. But never one created from such profound betrayal. That's the variable we couldn't predict. What happens to Blight champions? They burn bright and fast. The power consumes them eventually. Most die within 10 years of transformation. Torin looked at Riker meaningfully. Seraphina has 5 years left, maybe less. She's dying? She's been dying. Since the moment the Blight changed her, the frost marks on her skin, those are the Blight consuming her from within. Every use of her power speeds the process. Riker felt something crack in his chest. Why didn't you tell anyone? Would it have mattered? She's still dangerous, still powerful, still here for revenge. Torin moved toward the exit. But yes, Riker, the Revenant is mortal, very mortal, which might be why she's moving so quickly. Building her kingdom, claiming territory, exacting revenge. She knows her time is limited. The old wolf paused at the door. Tomorrow, when you fight her, remember that. You're not just fighting for territory or pride. You're fighting a woman who knows she's dying and wants to accomplish everything before the end. He left. Riker sat in the dusty archive surrounded by centuries of Pack wisdom and realized the horrible truth. Seraphina was going to die regardless of who won tomorrow's fight. The Blight would consume her within 5 years, and she knew it. Everything she was doing, the army, the territory claims, the revenge, was a dying woman's final act. He looked at Mara's vial of emotional suppressant. Tomorrow he'd face Serafina in combat. Would fight her with everything he had, but tonight he needed to mourn, because he'd killed her twice. Once when he left her in the Blight, and again when the Blight's transformation set her on a path to death. He didn't drink the vial. He needed to feel this, needed to carry the weight of what he'd done. When he fought her tomorrow, he'd do it as himself, broken, guilty, grieving. It was the least he owed her, the very least. Chapter 5. The Challenge. The clearing between the camps filled with wolves before the sun touched the horizon. North Pine Pack on one side, arranged in traditional combat witness formation. Warriors at the front, elders and council behind them, civilians at the back. Gary stood at the head, wearing the Alpha's circlet, his face grim. The Blight Pack on the other side, and their formation was nothing like tradition. They sat in perfect circles, concentric rings, radiating outward from a central point. Every wolf identical in posture, their silver eyes fixed forward, not watching, witnessing. The difference was subtle but profound. Between the two camps, a space had been cleared, 50 feet of neutral ground marked with stones at each corner. The traditional combat circle, where pack law would be satisfied in blood. Riker stood at North Pine's edge, wearing minimal clothing, just leather pants, his chest bare, showing the scars from decades of battles, his feet bare against the cold ground. Across the clearing, Serafina emerged from her camp. She'd stripped down to black fighting leathers that left her arms and shoulders exposed. The frost marks covering her skin seemed to glow brighter in the pre-dawn light, pulsing with barely contained power. Her white hair was bound in a tight braid, her eyes blazed silver white. She looked like death given form, beautiful, terrible, inevitable. She walked to the combat circle without looking at him, her movements fluid and predatory, took her position at the opposite edge. Elder Torin stepped forward as the neutral arbiter. Neither pack could contest his authority. "This challenge is witnessed under moon law," Torin's voice carried across the clearing. "Single combat, shifted form, victory by submission, incapacitation, or death. The winner claims the disputed territory. The loser accepts the judgment without appeal." He looked at Serafina. "Do you accept these terms, Revenant of the Blight Pack?" "I accept." He looked at Riker. "Do you accept these terms, Champion of North Pine Pack?" "I accept." "Then let the challenge begin when the sun touches the horizon." Torin stepped back. Silence fell across the clearing. Riker and Serafina stood facing each other, 50 feet apart, while the sky slowly lightened from black to deep blue to pale gray. "You could have avoided this," Serafina said quietly, her voice carried only to him. "Last night's offer still stands. Submit now." "Save yourself." "No." "Fool." But something flickered in her eyes. Respect? Regret? It was gone too quickly to identify. "I know you're dying," Riker said. Her entire body went rigid. "What?" "The Blight is consuming you. You have maybe 5 years left. Elder Torin told me." He met her silver gaze steadily. "This revenge, this kingdom you're building, it's all a dying woman's final legacy." For a moment, her mask cracked completely. He saw raw emotion there, fury, grief, bitter acknowledgement. "So you know." Her voice was ice. "Does that make you feel better? Knowing I'll die regardless of what happens here?" "No, it makes me feel worse." "Good." The mask slammed back into place. "Then let's get started. I want you to carry that knowledge when I break every bone in your body." The sun touched the horizon. "Shift!" Torin commanded. Riker's wolf burst forth in a cascade of pain and power. His bones cracked and reformed. His senses exploded outward. The world sharpened into crystalline focus. He stood on 4 legs, massive, dark-furred, the apex predator. 8 feet of muscle and claw and fang, the alpha wolf that had led North Pine to victory in a dozen territorial wars. Across from him, Serafina shifted, and the world held its breath. Her wolf was wrong. Not just changed, fundamentally different from any wolf Riker had ever seen. Slightly smaller than his wolf, but that was the only way she seemed lesser. Her fur was pure white, almost luminescent in the dawn light. The frost marks covered her entire body, pulsing with silver energy. Her eyes blazed like captured stars. But the wrongness was deeper than appearance. She moved like water, like shadow, like something that existed between states of matter. Her form seemed to blur at the edges, as if reality couldn't quite hold her shape. The blight had made her into something that was barely wolf anymore, something other. They circled each other. Riker's instincts screamed warnings. Every muscle in his body recognized her as predator, as threat, as something that could kill him. Seraphina's lips pulled back, showing teeth that looked too sharp, too white. Then she attacked. She moved faster than physics should allow, one moment at the circle's edge, the next at his throat. Riker barely dodged, her teeth snapping shut an inch from his jugular. He countered, claws extended, going for her exposed flank. She wasn't there. Twisted midair like gravity was optional. Landed behind him, raked claws across his hindquarters. Pain exploded. Not just from the wounds, from cold. Her claws carried frost that bit deeper than the cuts themselves. Riker spun, caught her with his shoulder, sent her tumbling. She rolled with it, came up snarling. They crashed together in the center of the circle, teeth and claws and desperation. Riker fought with everything he'd learned in 30 years of combat, used his size advantage, his superior strength, his experience. Landed solid hits that should have broken ribs, but Seraphina fought like something that didn't care about injury, took damage that would drop normal wolves and kept coming. Her style was all aggression, no defense, every strike designed to maim, to cripple, to destroy. And she was fast, impossibly fast. Riker's world narrowed to pain and motion. Blood, his blood, stained the ground. Her claws opened wounds that burned with cold. Her teeth found purchase in his shoulder, his leg, his side. He gave as good as he got. His fangs tore chunks from her shoulder. His claws raked across her ribs. His superior mass let him slam her into the ground hard enough to crack stone, but she always got back up. Around them, both packs watched in horror. This wasn't a clean fight. Wasn't honorable combat between worthy opponents. This was mutual destruction. Seraphina lunged for his throat. Riker met her head on. They locked together, each trying to tear out the other's jugular, both refusing to release. Blood poured from a dozen wounds on both wolves. And slowly, terribly, Riker realized he was losing. Not because she was stronger. She wasn't. His wolf was larger, more powerful, but she was willing to trade injury for injury in a way he couldn't match. Every exchange left them both damaged, but she didn't slow, didn't hesitate, fought like pain was irrelevant, fought like she had nothing to lose, because she didn't. She was already dying. This fight was just choosing how. Riker's wolf was tiring. The cold from her strikes was spreading through his body, slowing his reactions. His muscles were stiffening, his movements becoming sluggish. Seraphina sensed the shift. She disengaged, circled him, predatory, patient. Tired? Her voice was harsh in wolf form, barely intelligible. We've only just started. She feinted left. He tracked the movement. Too slow. She was already right, slamming into his injured side. Her weight, insignificant compared to his, somehow drove him to the ground. Her jaws clamped on his throat. Not hard enough to kill, just enough to control. She had him. The crowd went silent. This was it. The moment of submission or death. Riker felt her teeth against his pulse. One bite, and he was done. Felt the cold radiating from her body, seeping into his wounds, spreading toward his heart. Submit, she growled against his throat. Say it. Let everyone hear you admit defeat. He should submit, should save his life. The fight was lost, but something in him refused. Not pride, not stubbornness, understanding. She didn't want his submission. She wanted him to fight to the end, to prove he'd changed, to show he'd finally learned what strength really meant. Instead of submitting, Riker went limp, stopped fighting. But not in surrender, in trust. He bared his throat completely, exposed his most vulnerable point. "Do it," he said. "If this is what you need to be free of me, do it." Serafina's jaws tightened. He felt her teeth break skin. Then, nothing. She held the position for 1 heartbeat, 2, 3. Then she released him and stepped back, shifting to human form. She stood over his wolf, breathing hard, covered in blood and wounds. Her eyes blazed with fury and something else, something that looked horribly like anguish. "Shift," she commanded. Riker shifted back to human form. Every wound burned worse in human skin. He lay on the ground, too damaged to stand, looking up at her. "Why?" Her voice was raw. "Why didn't you fight to the end? Why give up?" "I didn't give up. I trusted you." Blood filled his mouth when he spoke. "Trusted that you're still Serafina underneath the Revenant, that you wouldn't kill an opponent who surrendered his life to your judgment." "I'm not Serafina." "Then prove it. Kill me." She stood there, shaking with rage or grief or both. Around them, the witnesses watched in stunned silence. This wasn't how challenges ended, not with the victor refusing to finish the defeated. "You're trying to manipulate me," Serafina said. "Make me show mercy so you can claim moral victory." "No, I'm showing you that I've learned." Riker coughed. More blood. "Learned that strength isn't about never submitting. It's about knowing when you've lost and accepting the consequences." Pretty words from a man who left me to die. "I know. I'm not asking forgiveness. I'm just accepting judgment." He met her blazing eyes. "You won. I lost. The territory is yours. I'm yours. Do whatever you need to do." Serafina looked down at him for a long moment. Then she threw back her head and screamed. Not rage, not triumph. Anguish. Pure, terrible anguish that echoed across the clearing like breaking glass. When she looked back down, her eyes were wet. Actual tears cutting tracks through the blood on her face. "I can't," she whispered. "I planned this for 5 years, dreamed about destroying you, and now, I can't." She collapsed to her knees beside him. "You broke me," she said, voice cracking. "Left me to die and broke everything I was, and I spent 5 years becoming strong enough to break you back. But now you're lying here trusting me, giving me the revenge I wanted, and I can't take it because—" She pressed her hands to her face. Frost spread from her touch, crystallizing her own tears. "Because some part of me still loves you, still remembers what we had before everything went wrong, and that part won't let me finish this." Riker stared at her. "Serafina, don't!" She stood abruptly, wrapping her arms around herself. "Don't say anything. You won. Not the fight, but everything else. You made me show weakness, made me feel human emotions I spent 5 years burning away." She turned to address Torin. "I claim victory in combat, but decline to claim the territory." Gasps from both packs. "What?" Gary stepped forward. "You won. The territory is yours by right." "I don't want it." Serafina's voice was hollow. "I don't want any of this anymore." She looked at her pack, at Cade and the first 6, and all the wolves who'd followed her. "Return to the Blight," she commanded. "All of you, now!" "Revenant," Cade began. "Go!" The authority in her voice was absolute. One by one, her wolves stood and melted back into the trees. Even Cade hesitated, then bowed and disappeared. Within minutes, the Blight pack was gone. Only Serafina remained, standing alone in the blood-stained combat circle. She looked at Riker, still lying wounded on the ground. "I hope you're happy," she said bitterly. "You got what you wanted. I showed you mercy, proved I'm still weak enough to care." "That's not weakness." "Yes, it is." She was shaking. "Strength is cold. Strength is unforgiving. Strength is being able to destroy your enemies without hesitation. And I hesitated. I showed you mercy when you deserved none. That's weakness." "Or it's humanity," Riker said quietly. "Humanity got me abandoned to die. Humanity got my child killed. Humanity is what I burned away to survive." Tears were streaming freely now. And you made me remember it, made me feel it again. Do you have any idea how much that hurts? She turned to leave. Wait, Riker managed to sit up despite the pain. Don't go, please. Let you what? Apologize? Explain? Try to make this better? She laughed bitterly. There is no making this better, Riker. You destroyed me 5 years ago. I rebuilt myself into something that couldn't be destroyed, and then you destroyed that too by making me care again. I'm sorry. I know. You're always sorry. She wrapped her arms around herself. But sorry doesn't change anything. Sorry doesn't bring back our child. Sorry doesn't give me back the 5 years I lost. Sorry doesn't stop the blight from consuming me. Then let me help you. Let the pack healers... There is no help. The blight's transformation is irreversible. I have maybe 5 years left before it consumes me completely. She met his eyes one last time. I was going to spend those years building an empire, taking revenge, accomplishing something before the end. You still can... No, I can't. Because you made me want something else. Her voice broke. You made me want forgiveness, want reconciliation, want things that are impossible because I can't undo what I've become any more than you can undo what you did. She started walking toward the forest. Serafina! Riker tried to stand, failed. Please don't leave like this. She paused at the tree line. I'm not Serafina, she said one final time. Serafina died in the blight. I'm just the ghost she left behind. Then she was gone, disappearing into the trees like smoke dissipating. Riker knelt in the combat circle, surrounded by his pack, victorious by forfeit, and felt nothing except the hollow ache of watching her leave. Again. Gary reached him first. Riker, you're badly injured. We need to get you to the healers. She left, Riker said numbly. I finally got through to her, and she left. You won the challenge. I didn't win anything. Riker looked at the blood on the ground, his and hers mixed together. I just made everything worse. They carried him to the healing hall, but all he could think about was the look in her eyes when she'd said she still loved him, and the devastation on her face when she'd realized that love didn't change anything. Three days passed. Riker's wounds healed slowly. The frost damage from Serafina's claws had complicated the healing process. Mara said he'd carry scars from this fight for the rest of his life. He barely noticed. Gary came to visit on the 4th day carrying news. The Blight Pack is gone, Gary reported. Scouts confirmed they've withdrawn completely, dismantled their camp, pulled back into the Blight Zone. The border is quiet. Good. There's more. Gary hesitated. Alpha Tauren approached me with a proposition. He wants to establish formal trade agreements with North Pine, strengthen our alliance. That's good for the pack. His son Kale specifically requested permission to travel to the Blight Zone, said he wants to negotiate with the Revenant directly. That got Riker's attention. Why? He didn't say, but I got the impression he was interested in her. Politically or personally, I can't tell. Something twisted in Riker's chest. Jealousy? He had no right to that emotion. Let him try, Riker said flatly. Maybe he can reach her where I failed. Gary gave him a long look. You didn't fail, Riker. You got through to her, made her remember her humanity. And she hated me for it. Or she hated herself for still caring. Gary sat down. What are you going to do now? Riker looked out the window toward the northern ridge, toward the Blight Zone, where Serafina was probably sitting in her palace, surrounded by her pack, trying to rebuild the walls he'd torn down. I don't know, he admitted. For 5 years I lived with guilt over what I did. Now I live with guilt over what I can't undo. Maybe you're not supposed to undo it. Maybe you're just supposed to live with it. That's not much of a consolation. It's all we get sometimes. Gary stood. The pack needs you, Riker. Needs you to heal, to return to training, to be present. Can you do that? Could he? Riker thought about it. Thought about Serafina dying slowly in the blight. Thought about the child they'd lost. Thought about all the ways he'd failed and all the ways failure would haunt him. "Yes," he said finally. "I can do that." "Good." Gary moved to the door. "Oh, and Lydia sent word. She's not coming back. Filed for formal severance of the mating bond." I figured. "You don't seem upset." "I'm not. She deserves better than a mate who's in love with a ghost." Gary left. Riker sat alone in the healing room and tried to figure out how to live with being forgiven by the one person he needed to hate him. Chapter 6. What She Became. She made it back to the palace before the tears froze on her face. The frost spreading from her eyes turned the tears to ice crystals that shattered when they hit the ground, leaving a trail of glittering fragments behind her. Her pack parted silently as she walked through the city, their silver eyes tracking her progress with concern that echoed through the hive bond. "The Revenant is in pain," the collective whispered in her mind. "The Revenant bleeds. The Revenant needs us." "Leave me alone," she said aloud, and the mental voices quieted to a low hum. But they didn't disappear. They never did. She climbed the stairs to her chambers, the highest room in the palace, carved from blight-twisted wood that pulsed with faint silver light. The windows looked out over the dead forest that had become her kingdom. Once inside, she locked the door. Not that it would stop her pack if they truly wanted to enter, but they'd respect her need for privacy, usually. She collapsed against the wall and let herself feel it, all of it. The pain from her wounds, Riker's claws had torn deep, the exhaustion from the fight, the rage at herself for showing mercy, the grief for the child she'd lost, the love she'd tried so hard to bury, and underneath everything, the constant burning ache of the blight consuming her from within. She pressed her hands to her chest where the pain was worst. The frost marks pulsed brighter, spreading across her ribs like a cage of ice squeezing her heart. "I should have killed him," she whispered to the empty room. "I had him. I should have finished it." But she hadn't. Because when he'd looked up at her with those eyes full of guilt and acceptance and trust, she'd seen him. Not the alpha who'd abandoned her, not the mate who'd called their child a mistake, just Riker, the man she'd loved before everything went wrong, and some pathetic human part of her still loved him. "Stupid," she hissed, slamming her fist against the wall. Ice spread from the impact, covering the wood in crystalline patterns. Weak, pathetic, everything I swore I'd never be again. The hive bond pulsed with her pack's concern. "Revenant needs comfort," Cade's voice cut through the others, distinct and clear. "Permission to enter?" "No," respectfully insisting. The door opened. Cade stepped inside, his massive form filling the doorway. His silver eyes found her immediately, and his expression, usually stoic, cracked with worry. "You're hurt," he said, moving toward her. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding and crying. You're not fine." He knelt beside her, his presence solid and warm. "Let me call the healers." "No healers." She pulled away from him. "The wounds will close on their own. They always do." "Physical wounds, yes, but those aren't the only kind you're carrying." Cade's hand hovered near her shoulder, not quite touching. "Through the bond, I felt what happened. You showed him mercy." "I showed him weakness." "You showed him humanity." Cade's voice was gentle. "Revenant, we don't follow you because you're cold and merciless. We follow you because you saved us when no one else would, because you care about the broken and discarded. That's not weakness. That's why we love you." The word love hit her like a physical blow. She looked at Cade, her first, her most loyal, the wolf who'd been dying in the blight when she found him, who she'd transformed and bound to herself, who'd served her without question for 5 years. "You shouldn't love me," she said. "I'm using you, using all of you, building an army to satisfy my need for revenge. You gave us life when we had none, purpose when we were lost, family when we'd been cast out. Cade finally touched her shoulder, his hand warm against her cold skin. If that's using us, then use us. We don't care. Cade, the pack wants you to know something. His grip tightened slightly. We don't need you to be the Revenant, cold and untouchable and inhuman. We need you to be Seraphina, the woman who cried when she found each of us dying, who held us through the transformation, who built this place as a home, not just a fortress. Seraphina is dead. Then why are you crying for her? The question shattered something in her chest. She buried her face in her hands and sobbed, great, wrenching sounds that she'd held back for 5 years, all the pain and grief and loneliness she'd tried to burn away coming back in a flood. Cade pulled her against his chest and held her while she broke apart. Through the hive bond, she felt her pack's response. 200 wolves feeling her anguish and sending back comfort, support, love. Not demanding she be strong, just accepting that she was hurting. I don't know how to be her anymore, Seraphina whispered against Cade's chest. The blight burned away too much. I don't remember how to be soft, how to trust, how to be anything except surviving. Then we'll help you remember, Cade's voice rumbled through his chest. We're your pack. That's what packs do. Even though I'm dying? Especially because you're dying. He pulled back to look at her. Revenant, we all know. We've known for years. The frost marks spreading, the way you struggle to breathe sometimes, the pain you try to hide. And you stayed anyway? Where else would we go? You're our alpha, our mother, our home. His silver eyes held hers. We'll stay until the end, however long you have left. The acceptance in his voice destroyed her completely. She cried until she had no tears left, until the ice spreading from her eyes stopped and the frost marks on her skin dimmed to a faint glow. Finally, exhausted, she pulled away. Thank you, she managed. Always. Cade stood. Now, will you let the healers treat your wounds? You may heal fast, but that doesn't mean you should suffer unnecessarily. She nodded. As Cade left to summon the healers, Seraphina moved to the window and looked out over her kingdom. The blight zone stretched for miles in every direction, dead trees, ash ground, but here and there she could see signs of life, her pack moving between buildings, lights burning in windows, children, the young ones born to her wolves after transformation, playing in the streets. She'd built this, created life in the heart of death, and she'd done it while dying herself. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was her legacy. Not revenge, not territorial conquest, but home, for the ones who had nowhere else to go. The cave pulsed with wrongness. Seraphina lay on the stone floor, her body convulsing as the blight worked through her. The rejection wounds from the severed mate bond were nothing compared to this. This was her cells being unmade, her bones melting and reforming, her blood turning to ice in her veins. She screamed until her throat bled. And through it all, the blight whispered, "What do you want, little Omega?" "Strength," she gasped out. "Power. Enough that no one can hurt me again." "Strength has a price. Are you willing to pay?" "Anything." The blight laughed. It sounded like winter wind through dead trees. "Very well. We will make you strong, but first, we must burn away the weakness." Pain exploded in her chest, not physical pain. Worse, she felt her capacity for trust dying, the gentle parts of her personality withering, her ability to love freely being stripped away layer by layer. And her child, oh God, her child. She felt the tiny life inside her flickering, struggling against the corruption, fighting to survive. "Please," she begged, "not the baby. Take anything else, but let my baby live." "The child is already lost," the blight said without emotion. "The transformation is incompatible with pregnancy. You carry death in your womb now." "No!" She tried to stop it, tried to protect the small life with what little power she had, But the blight was stronger. She felt the exact moment her child died, a light extinguishing, a potential future ending before it could begin. The grief hit like an avalanche, and in that moment of absolute anguish, something in her broke completely. The gentle Omega who'd loved Riker despite his coldness. The hopeful mate who'd believed love could change everything. The mother who'd wanted to protect her child, all of it burned away in the crucible of loss. What remained was something else, something cold, something that couldn't be hurt because it couldn't feel. Good, the blight purred. Now you're ready. Now we can make you strong. The transformation accelerated. Her hair bleached white as the color drained into the cave floor. Her eyes changed from green to silver, reflecting the blight's essence. The frost marks appeared on her skin, mapping the corruption spreading through her body. And power flooded in, cold, terrible, absolute. She could feel the blight itself responding to her will, could command ice and frost, could sense the life force of everything around her, could reach out and touch the minds of other wounded creatures in the corruption. On the 21st day, she walked out of the cave, changed, powerful, dying. The blight had given her strength, but in exchange, it was slowly consuming her from within. 5 to 10 years, maybe. Then the frost would reach her heart, and she'd become like the dead forest around her. Frozen, lifeless, nothing. She had time, but not much, so she'd better use it well. The healers came and went, treating her wounds with practiced efficiency. They didn't comment on her red eyes or the ice crystals still clinging to her hair. By evening, Seraphina felt more herself, or at least more like the revenant she'd built herself into. She called a gathering. Her entire pack assembled in the Great Hall, a massive structure at the palace's heart. 200 wolves in human form, all bearing the silver-marked signs of her transformation. She stood before them and felt the hive bond connecting them all, a web of consciousness that made them one entity with many bodies. "Today, I showed weakness," she said, her voice carrying through the silent hall. "I had the opportunity to destroy the Alpha who abandoned me, and I let him live." No one spoke. They simply watched, waited. "Some of you might think this means I'm losing my edge, becoming soft again, reverting to what I was before the blight." Still silence. "But I want you to understand something." She looked across the faces of her pack. "I didn't spare him out of weakness. I spared him because I chose to, because I decided that mercy had more value than revenge." Vera stepped forward. "Revenant, we don't judge you for showing mercy. We're grateful for it." "It's why you saved us instead of leaving us to die." "We follow you because you care," Ash added, "not because you're ruthless." Murmurs of agreement rippled through the pack. Seraphina felt something loosen in her chest, the fear that they'd reject her for being human. "Thank you," she said quietly, "but this creates a problem. I built this pack on the promise of revenge against the structures that discarded us. If I'm not pursuing that anymore, what's our purpose?" "Building something better," Cade said firmly. "You've already started. This city, this pack, it's proof that the outcasts can thrive, that the weak can become strong, that the system that rejected us was wrong." "He's right," another wolf said. "You don't need to destroy North Pine to prove your point. You've already proven it by surviving." Seraphina looked around at the faces of her pack, saw determination, loyalty, hope. "Then we shift our purpose," she announced. "No more territorial conquest, no more revenge. We build instead. Make this place a true haven for any wolf the packs throw away. Show them all that strength comes in many forms." The pack erupted in agreement. As the gathering dispersed, Seraphina felt lighter than she had in years. Maybe she could do this, build something meaningful with the time she had left. Maybe. A commotion at the entrance to the Great Hall caught her attention. One of the perimeter guards rushed in, breathing hard. "Revenant, we have a visitor, an Alpha from the Shadowcrest pack. He requests an audience." Seraphina's eyes narrowed. "Which Alpha?" "He says his name is Kale," Kael stood in the palace's receiving chamber, looking utterly out of place among the blight-twisted architecture. He was impressive. Serafina had to admit that. Tall, powerfully built, with the confident bearing of someone born to leadership. His dark hair was pulled back, revealing a face that was handsome in a traditional warrior alpha sort of way. Nothing like Riker's harder edges and guilt-shadowed eyes. "Alpha Kael," Serafina greeted him formally. "What brings you to the Blight Zone?" "Curiosity," Kael said, his eyes roaming over the palace interior with undisguised interest. "And opportunity." "Explain." "I watched you during the negotiations, saw how you commanded your pack, how you built an army from nothing, how you stood against an alpha who'd wronged you with absolute confidence." He met her eyes. "I've never seen anything like it." "And I want to know more. About you, about the Blight Pack, about what you're building here." He took a step closer. "My father thinks you're a threat. I think you're a revolution." Despite herself, Serafina felt a flicker of interest. "You're not afraid of me?" "Terrified," Kael admitted with a slight smile, "but fascinated more than frightened. You're creating something unprecedented, a pack structure based on mutual support rather than dominance hierarchy, taking the rejects and making them powerful." "Why does that interest you?" "Because I've seen the flaws in traditional pack structure. Seen good wolves discarded for arbitrary reasons. Strength isn't just physical power, it's adaptability. Innovation. Compassion." His eyes held hers. "You understand that. Most alphas don't." "Pretty words. Truth." He gestured to the palace around them. "This place shouldn't exist. Everyone says the blight kills everything. Yet here you've built a thriving city. That takes more than power. It takes vision." Serafina studied him carefully. Was this genuine interest or political maneuvering? "What do you want, Kael?" "To learn from you. To understand how you've accomplished this, and—" He hesitated, then continued, "to propose an alliance between our packs." "An alliance?" "Trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, cultural exchange. My father is old-fashioned, but I'll be alpha someday. When I am, I want Shadowcrest to embrace new ideas, your ideas." "And what do you get out of this arrangement?" Kael's smile widened slightly. "Access to the most innovative pack leader I've ever met, and perhaps," his eyes searched her face, "the chance to know you better, as more than just political entities." There it was, the personal interest beneath the political proposal. Serafina felt nothing. No attraction, no interest, but also no revulsion, no automatic rejection, just neutral assessment. "I'm dying," she said bluntly. "The blight is consuming me. I have maybe 5 years left." "I know. My father told me what the texts say about blight champions." Kael's expression didn't change. "That doesn't change my interest. 5 years with someone extraordinary is worth more than a lifetime with someone ordinary." "You barely know me." "Then let me know you. Spend time with me. Show me your city, your pack, your vision." He extended his hand. "No obligations. No expectations. Just possibility." Serafina looked at his offered hand. This could be good for the pack. An alliance with Shadowcrest would legitimize them politically, give them trade opportunities, protection from other packs who might see them as threats. And personally, Kael was nothing like Riker. He looked at her with respect, not guilt, saw her strength, not his failures, offered partnership, not redemption. Maybe that was what she needed, not to reconcile with the past, but to build a different future. She took his hand. "Show me what you have to offer, Kael of Shadowcrest. But know this, I don't need saving. I don't need fixing. If you're looking for a damsel to rescue, you've come to the wrong place." "I'm looking for an equal," Kael said firmly. "Someone who challenges me, someone who's accomplished the impossible." "I think I found her." He kissed her hand, formal, respectful, and released it. "May I tour your city? Cade will show you around. Serafina gestured, and her second materialized from the shadows. I have work to attend to. As Kyle left with Cade, Serafina stood alone in the receiving chamber. Part of her felt like she was betraying something, like accepting Kale's interest was abandoning the complicated, agonizing connection with Riker. But another part, the part that had survived 5 years in the Blight, recognized opportunity. Riker was guilt and pain and impossible love. Kale was possibility and future and uncomplicated respect. Maybe it was time to choose the future, even if she only had 5 years to live it. That night, she dreamed, not of the Blight, not of the transformation, of Riker. He sat in the combat circle, bloodied and beaten, looking up at her with those eyes full of trust. Do it, Dream Riker said. If this is what you need to be free of me, do it. And in the dream, she did. Closed her jaws on his throat and bit down. Felt his life pour out between her teeth. Felt the mate bond, the phantom connection that shouldn't exist anymore, snap completely. Felt herself become truly alone. She woke gasping, the frost marks on her chest blazing with cold fire. The hive bond hummed with her pack's concern, but she pushed them away gently. I'm fine. Just a nightmare. Sleep. They obeyed, though she felt Cade's awareness lingering slightly before fading. Serafina sat in her bed, wrapped in furs, and touched her chest where the mate bond had once lived. Nothing there now, just cold and the slow spread of Blight corruption. But the dream lingered, the feeling of killing Riker, of finally being free. Why did it feel less like victory and more like loss? Because you're weak, she told herself. Still weak, still hoping for things that can't be. But even as she said it, she knew it wasn't true. She wasn't weak. She was human. And maybe, after 5 years of trying to burn that away, it was okay to be human again, even if it hurt, especially if it hurt, because pain meant she was alive, and alive meant she could still choose. Choose revenge or reconciliation, choose Kale or Riker, choose to spend her remaining years building or destroying. She had time to decide. Not much time, but some. And for a dying woman, some was everything. Chapter 7. The Third Party. Riker learned about Kale from Gary, who heard it from a traveling merchant, who'd witnessed it firsthand in the Blight Zone. He's courting her, Gary said carefully, watching Riker's reaction. Formally, brought gifts, spent 3 days there. They were seen walking the city together, talking. The merchant said she actually smiled. Riker's hand tightened around the water cup he was holding. The wood creaked under the pressure. Riker, it's fine. His voice came out flat. She's free to pursue whoever she wants. I have no claim on her. You're lying to yourself. I'm accepting reality. Riker set down the cup before he crushed it. She deserves someone who didn't abandon her, someone who looks at her and sees possibility instead of guilt. Kyle can give her that. Kyle can give her political advantage, Gary corrected. Shadowcrest is a powerful pack. An alliance would legitimize the Blight pack, give them trade routes, protection. Then it's a smart move, is it? Or is she trying to move on from you and choosing the first available option? Riker stood abruptly. It doesn't matter. What she does is her business. It matters to you. It shouldn't. Gary watched him head toward the door. Where are you going? Training. Need to clear my head. Running from your feelings won't make them disappear. Maybe not, but it's better than sitting here thinking about her with someone else. He left before Gary could respond. The training yard was empty this early in the morning. Good. Riker needed the solitude. He shifted into wolf form and attacked the practice dummies with savage intensity, tore through wood and straw like they were enemies, pushed himself until his muscles screamed and his lungs burned. But he couldn't outrun the images in his head. Serafina walking beside Kale through the Blight City, smiling at him the way she used to smile at Riker before everything went wrong, accepting courtship gifts, maybe accepting more than gifts. The thought of her with someone else, touching someone else, Trusting someone else, loving someone else, was agony. But what right did he have to that agony? He'd thrown her away, left her to die, killed their child through his actions. If she found happiness with Kyle, he should be grateful, should want that for her, should. But the jealousy burning in his chest didn't care about should. He destroyed 3 more practice dummies before exhaustion finally forced him to stop. He shifted back to human form and collapsed on the ground, breathing hard. Impressive display of self-destruction. Riker's head snapped up. Lydia stood at the edge of the training yard, arms crossed. She looked good, healthy, rested, more peaceful than he'd seen her in years. "I thought you left," Riker said. "I did. I'm visiting. Came to collect some things I left behind." She walked closer. "Heard you were out here beating yourself up. Wanted to see if you were doing it literally or just emotionally." "Both." "Figured." She sat down beside him. "I heard about Kyle." "Everyone's heard about Kyle. Does it bother you?" Riker laughed bitterly. "What do you think?" "I think you're in love with a woman who terrifies you, who you hurt beyond measure, and who you have no idea how to fix things with." Lydia's voice was kind but firm. "And I think you're watching her move on, and it's killing you." "I deserve it." "Probably, but that doesn't make it hurt less." She paused. "You know what the worst part is? Kyle is actually good for her." That stabbed deeper than Riker expected. "What?" "I've heard the reports. He treats her with respect, sees her as an equal, doesn't try to change her or fix her or carry guilt around her. He just accepts her as she is." Lydia looked at him. That's what she needed all along. Someone who didn't see her as weak or broken, just different. "I know. So if you love her, really love her, you should want her to be with someone who's good for her, even if that someone isn't you." Riker's throat was tight. "I do want that." "Liar." Lydia stood. "You want her to be happy, but you also want her to be happy with you. Those 2 things might be incompatible. You need to decide which one matters more." She left him sitting in the destroyed training yard, surrounded by the wreckage of his self-control. Kyle had stayed. Not continuously. He returned to Shadowcrest every few days to handle pack business, but he kept coming back, bringing gifts, asking questions, spending time with Serafina, and genuinely seeming to enjoy her company. And Serafina found herself not hating it. He was easy to be around, didn't carry the weight of shared trauma. Didn't look at her with guilt or regret, just interest and respect and carefully controlled attraction. "This is remarkable," Kale said, studying the map room where Serafina tracked all the abandoned wolves in surrounding territories. "You know about every exile, every cast-off, every wounded wolf for 300 miles? My scouts are thorough." Serafina traced a finger over the map. "Every marker represents someone who needs help. Some we've already brought in. Others we're watching, waiting for the right moment. And if they don't want to join the Blight Pack, we help them anyway. Food, supplies, safe passage to other territories. We don't force transformation. We offer it." Kyle looked at her with undisguised admiration. "You've built something incredible, a support network for the marginalized. Most alphas would see that as weakness. Most alphas are fools." "Agreed." He moved closer. "Serafina, I want to propose something." "Another alliance term?" "A personal request." His eyes held hers. "Let me court you, formally. Not as political maneuvering, but as genuine interest in knowing you better." Serafina's first instinct was to refuse, to maintain distance, to protect herself from potential hurt. But why? Kyle was offering exactly what she should want: respect, partnership, a future without the weight of past betrayals. "Why?" she asked. "Because you're extraordinary. Because I've never met anyone who's accomplished what you have. Because when you speak about your pack, your eyes light up with passion I rarely see in anyone." He reached for her hand, hesitated, waited for permission. She gave it. He took her hand gently. "Because I think we could build something amazing together. My pack's resources combined with your vision, my political connections combined with your revolutionary ideas. That sounds very practical. It is. But it's also personal. His thumb traced over her knuckles. I find you fascinating, attractive, impressive, and I'd like the chance to see if those feelings develop into something more. Serafina studied their joined hands. His skin was warm against her perpetual cold, living heat meeting dying frost. I'm not who I was before the blight, she said. I'm damaged, broken in ways that can't be fixed. Everyone's broken in some way. The question is whether the broken pieces still fit together into something functional. He smiled slightly. And from where I'm standing, your pieces fit just fine. Despite herself, Serafina smiled. It felt strange, foreign, like muscles she hadn't used in years. One condition, she said, name it. No expectations, no assumptions. We explore this possibility, but I make no promises about where it leads. Acceptable. Kael lifted her hand and kissed it. May I stay for dinner? I'd like to meet more of your pack, understand how the hive bond works. You're not disturbed by it? I'm curious. There's a difference. Serafina found herself relaxing slightly. Dinner then, but Cade will be evaluating you the entire time. Your second? I'd expect nothing less. Dinner was surprisingly pleasant. Kael charmed the first 6 with genuine interest in their transformation stories, asked intelligent questions about the blight, treated every pack member with respect regardless of their rank or history. He was good at this. The political dance, the social navigation, everything Riker had never been. The thought came unbidden, and Serafina pushed it away. Comparing them was pointless. Kael and Riker were completely different. One represented the future. One represented a past that couldn't be changed. Your pack loves you, Kael observed later, after the others had left. They stood on the palace balcony, looking out over the Blight City. Not just loyalty, genuine affection. I gave them life when they had none. You gave them more than that. Purpose, family, hope. He turned to face her. You're not just a leader. You're a symbol. Proof that the rejected can thrive. Symbols die, Serafina said quietly. I'm dying, Kael. The blight is consuming me. Every day the frost spreads a little further. In 5 years, maybe less, I'll be gone. I know. And that doesn't bother you? It saddens me, but it doesn't change my interest. He stepped closer. I'd rather have 5 years with someone extraordinary than a lifetime with someone ordinary, and you, Serafina, are anything but ordinary. He was close enough now that she could feel his warmth, see the genuine emotion in his eyes. He was going to kiss her, and she was going to let him, because moving forward meant letting go of the past, meant accepting that what she'd had with Riker was gone, meant choosing life, whatever time she had left, over pining for something impossible. Kael's lips met hers. Gentle, respectful, warm. She felt pleasant, safe, comfortable. Not the burning passion she'd felt with Riker, not the mate bond intensity that had consumed her before, just nice. When they parted, Kael smiled. Was that acceptable? Yes. Good, because I'd like to do it again sometime. We'll see. He laughed. I'll take that as encouragement. After he left, Serafina stood on the balcony alone and touched her lips. She'd kissed someone who wasn't Riker, and the world hadn't ended. Maybe she really could move on. Maybe Kael was exactly what she needed. Maybe... Through the hive bond, she felt a disturbance, not in her pack, something external, danger approaching. She focused, extending her senses through the blight zone. There, at the southern border, wolves, not hers, moving fast, wounded, and chasing them. Something wrong. something that felt like the blight but twisted, corrupted beyond even her control. "Cade!" she called. Her second appeared instantly. "Revenant?" "Something's wrong at the southern border. Gather the first 6. We need to investigate." As her pack mobilized, Seraphina felt ice spreading through her veins that had nothing to do with the blight's corruption. Whatever was coming wasn't natural, and it was headed straight for her territory. They found the wolves collapsed just inside the blight zone boundary, 3 of them, young, badly wounded, and absolutely terrified. Seraphina recognized their scent immediately. North Pine. "Healers!" she commanded, and her pack moved instantly. While they stabilized the wounded wolves, Seraphina scanned the tree line beyond. Something was out there, watching, waiting. She could feel it through the blight. A presence that was wrong, hungry, old. "What happened?" Cade asked the most conscious of the wounded wolves. "Monster," the young wolf gasped. "In the eastern forest. It killed 5 of our patrol. We ran. Only way to escape was through the blight. Thought we'd die anyway, but my territory is safer than whatever chased you," Seraphina finished. The wolf's eyes widened in recognition. "You're the Revenant." "I am, and you're in my protection now. Nothing will harm you here." The wolf passed out. "What kind of monster sends North Pine wolves running into the blight?" Vera asked. "The kind that's worse than death." Seraphina extended her senses further. The presence was closer now, testing the borders of her control. Then she felt it. Not a creature, a void, an absence of life so profound it made even the blight seem vibrant by comparison. "Everyone back to the city," Seraphina commanded. "Now! Revenant! Now!" Her pack obeyed instantly, carrying the wounded North Pine wolves with them. Seraphina stayed at the border, frost spreading from her feet in defensive patterns. The presence drew closer, and then she saw it. A wolf, but wrong. Its body was translucent, like looking through murky water. Where it stepped, vegetation didn't just die, it ceased to have ever existed. Reality itself warped around it. This wasn't natural, wasn't blight corruption. This was something older, something that had been sleeping and was now awake. The creature looked at her with eyes that were holes in existence, and it spoke, not in words, in feelings, in concepts pressed directly into her mind. Hunger, ancient, awake, power sensed, power desired. The Revenant will be consumed. Then it attacked. Seraphina barely dodged. The creature moved like liquid shadow, faster than anything its size should move. She countered with frost, walls of ice erupting from the ground, spikes of frozen power. The creature passed through them like they weren't there. Physical matter is irrelevant. Feed on essence, on life, on magic. It lunged for her. Seraphina ran. Not retreat. Strategic withdrawal. She needed help. Needed to understand what this thing was. The creature was faster. It caught her at the city's edge, translucent jaws closing on her arm. Pain exploded. Not physical. Worse. It was feeding on her essence, drinking her life force, consuming the very magic that kept her alive. She screamed. Through the hive bond, her pack felt her agony, converged on her location. Cade arrived first, shifting mid-leap, going for the creature's throat. His teeth passed through it like biting smoke. The creature backhanded him casually. Cade flew 20 feet and crashed into a building. The first 6 attacked as one. Coordinated, powerful, useless. Nothing physical could touch this thing, and it was still feeding, still draining Seraphina's essence. She felt herself weakening, the frost marks on her skin dimming, her connection to the blight fraying. "This is how I die," she thought distantly. Not from the blight's consumption, from something even the blight fears. Through the fading hive bond, she sent one final command. "Send for help. Shadowcrest. North Pine. Anyone. This thing will consume us all." Then the darkness took her. Riker was in the council meeting when the messenger arrived. One of the wolves from the Eastern Patrol, bleeding, terrified. "Monster in the forest!" he gasped. "Killed half our patrol. The others ran into the Blight Zone. We need—" "The Blight Zone?" Gary stood. "They're dead then." "No!" The wolf grabbed Gary's arm. "The Revenant saved them, pulled them into her protection, but the monster followed. It's attacking the Blight Pack." Riker's blood turned to ice. "What kind of monster?" "I don't know. It's like nothing. Like a hole in the world that eats everything." The description triggered something in Riker's memory. Ancient texts. Forbidden lore. "A void wraith," he breathed. Everyone turned to look at him. "What's a void wraith?" Gary demanded. "A creature from the time before Pax, before civilization. It feeds on magical essence, on life force, on power." Riker stood, his heart hammering. "The texts say they were sealed away millennia ago. If one's awake, then we're all in danger," Elder Torin finished. "These things don't stop at territory borders. They consume everything magical in their path until they're satisfied or destroyed." "Can they be destroyed?" Gary asked. "Only by magical force. Physical attacks are useless." Torin looked at Riker. "The most powerful magical being in this region is Seraphina," Riker said. "It's going after her because she's the strongest magical presence." "Then we need to help her," Gary said. "If she falls, that thing will come for every pack in the territories. She won't want our help. She doesn't get a choice. This is bigger than pack feuds or personal grievances." Gary grabbed his weapons. "Gather every warrior. We march for the Blight Zone. Now!" Riker was already moving, because the woman he loved was facing something that could kill her. And this time, he wouldn't abandon her, even if she hated him for coming. Even if his help made no difference, he would be there. Chapter 8, The Breaking Point. Riker led 50 North Pine warriors through the dead forest at a full sprint. The Blight's corruption pressed against them like physical weight. The air tasted wrong, metallic and cold. His warriors were struggling, their wolves whimpering inside them at the unnatural environment. But they pushed forward, because somewhere ahead, Seraphina was dying. He felt it somehow. Not through the mate bond, that had been severed years ago, but through something deeper, a connection that went beyond magic or ritual. The connection of having loved someone so completely that even betrayal couldn't fully kill it. "Alpha Riker!" Gary ran alongside him. "The corruption is getting worse. Some of the younger wolves can barely breathe. We're close. I can feel it." They burst into a clearing and stopped dead. The Blight City spread before them, impossible architecture carved from dead wood that somehow lived, silver lights burning, geometric patterns that hurt to look at. And in the city's center, chaos. The Void Wraith towered over everything, a translucent nightmare that made reality blur around its edges. Blight Pack wolves attacked it in waves, their coordinated assaults passing through it harmlessly. And on the ground, surrounded by her first 6, lay Seraphina. Even from this distance, Riker could see she was dying. Her skin had gone beyond pale to translucent. The frost marks covering her body pulsed erratically. Her breathing came in shallow gasps. The wraith had drained her nearly dry. Cade stood over her, snarling defiance at the creature. But even his impressive size meant nothing against something that existed partially outside reality. "Spread out," Riker commanded his warriors. "Protect the civilians. Get the wounded to safety. Gary, coordinate with the Blight Pack's second-in-command." "What about you?" Riker was already running toward Seraphina. He shifted mid-stride, his wolf form bursting forth, covered the distance in seconds, skidded to a stop beside her fallen form. The first 6 moved to block him. Cade's eyes blazed with silver fury. "You," Cade snarled. "You have nerve showing your face here." "I'm here to help." "We don't need your help. You've done enough damage." "Cade," Seraphina's voice was barely a whisper. "Let him through." The massive wolf hesitated, then stepped aside. Riker shifted back to human form and dropped to his knees beside her. Up close, she looked worse. The wraith had consumed so much of her essence that the blight's corruption was visible beneath her skin, dark veins spreading from her heart like cracks in ice. "You came," she said, confusion in her silver eyes. "Why?" "Because you needed help. I left you, rejected your territory, rejected you." "I know. I came anyway." Riker looked up at the wraith circling above them. "That thing is a void wraith, ancient predator. It feeds on magical essence. Can't hurt it. Physical attacks pass through. Because it exists between dimensions, half here, half in the void." Riker's mind raced through everything he'd read in the forbidden texts. The only thing that can anchor it to this reality is concentrated magical force. Bind it to the physical plane so it can be destroyed. "I tried." "Not strong enough." She coughed, and silver blood flecked her lips. "It drained too much. Can barely hold consciousness." "Then we combine our power." Her eyes widened. "The mate bond is severed. There's no connection to channel through." "There's always a connection." Riker placed his hand over her heart, feeling the erratic pulse beneath. "You felt it too. At the challenge, when I trusted you, when you chose mercy. The bond never truly died. We just buried it. Riker, trust me. One more time. Let me help you." Serafina looked at him for a long moment. He saw her walls crumbling, saw the desperate hope beneath the ice. "If this fails, then we fail together." She placed her cold hand over his. "Do it." Riker closed his eyes and reached for the bond. It was there, buried beneath years of denial and guilt and pain. Frayed and damaged, but present. A thread of connection that had never fully severed because some things went deeper than ritual or intention. He pulled on it, and Serafina gasped as power flooded through the connection. Not just his alpha strength, but her blight magic flowing into him, and his life force flowing into her. Their essences mixing, combining, becoming something neither was alone. The frost marks on Serafina's skin blazed with renewed light. Her wounds began healing, her breathing steadied, and around them the blight itself responded. Ice erupted from the ground in massive spikes. Frost spread across the city in patterns of devastating beauty. The temperature plummeted so fast the air crystallized, and the wraith shrieked. For the first time it felt pain. The combined magic anchored it to reality, made it solid, made it vulnerable. "Now!" Riker shouted to the assembled packs. "While it's solid, everything you have!" Wolves from both packs attacked as one, North Pine and Blight Pack fighting side by side, tearing into the wraith's now physical form with claws and teeth and desperate fury. The creature thrashed, trying to phase back into the void, but Riker and Serafina held it, channeled more power through their rekindled bond, kept it anchored. "It's working!" Cade roared, his jaws closing on what might have been the wraith's throat. The creature's shriek intensified, its form destabilizing, reality warping around it as it struggled. Then, with a sound like breaking glass, it shattered. The wraith exploded into fragments of void stuff that dissipated like smoke. The oppressive presence vanished. The wrongness in the air evaporated. Silence fell across the battlefield. Wolves from both packs stood panting, bloodied, staring at the space where the wraith had been. They'd won, but the cost. Riker felt it immediately, the power drain. The bond between him and Serafina had channeled massive amounts of essence to anchor the wraith, more than either of them could safely give. He was exhausted, drained, barely able to stand. But Serafina... She collapsed in his arms. "No, no, no." Riker caught her, cradling her against his chest. "Serafina, stay with me." Her skin was translucent now. The frost marks covered every inch of her, pulsing erratically. Her breathing came in tiny gasps. The blight's corruption had accelerated massively, Years of consumption compressed into moments. "Healers!" Cade shouted, but his face was ashen. He knew, they all knew, this was beyond healing. Seraphina's eyes fluttered open. "We won?" "Yes, the wraith is gone." "Good," she smiled faintly. "Saved them. Both packs. That's enough." "Don't," Riker's voice broke. "Don't talk like you're dying." "I've been dying for 5 years, just faster now." Her hand came up to touch his face. "Thank you. For coming. For helping. For showing me the bond was still there." "I love you." The words tore out of him. "I've loved you through everything. Through the abandonment and the transformation and the revenge. I never stopped. I'm so sorry for what I did. For throwing away what we had. For..." She pressed cold fingers to his lips. "I know. I've known for a while." Her eyes were sad but soft. "I love you too. Even after everything. Part of me never stopped. Then fight. Fight to stay. Let me help you heal." "Can't." The blight took too much, and anchoring the wraith, she coughed, and more silver blood came up. "Accelerated the consumption. Maybe have hours, not years." "No." Riker pulled her closer, as if holding her tight enough could keep her here. "You don't get to forgive me and then die. That's not fair. Life isn't fair. You taught me that." The words should have been cruel. Instead, they were just honest. Around them, both packs had formed a circle, watching their leaders, former and current, hold each other in the aftermath of battle. Then the circle parted. Kale walked through, his face grim. He'd fought in the battle, had blood on his clothes and exhaustion in his eyes. He looked at Seraphina in Riker's arms and stopped. "So," Kale said quietly, "the bond was never truly severed." "Kale." Seraphina tried to sit up, failed. "It's all right. I understand now." Kale knelt beside them. "I wondered why you never fully let me in, why you always held something back. It's because you were still his, even after everything he did. I was trying to move on. I know. And I appreciate that you tried." Kael's expression was sad, but accepting. "But you can't force your heart to let go of someone it's bound to, even when it should." He stood. "I'll leave you two to talk. The Blight Pack will need leadership when..." He couldn't finish. "Cade can manage until you make decisions." He walked away, shoulders squared despite the obvious pain. Seraphina watched him go. He deserved better. He deserved someone who can love him without reservation. You deserve to be with someone who never abandoned you. Riker's eyes burned. "But apparently we're both cursed to want what we can't have. Or blessed to have found each other, even if it's too late." Riker looked at the gathered packs, at Gary managing the wounded, at the Blight Pack tending their own, at the city Seraphina had built from nothing. "What happens to them?" he asked. "Your pack. When you're gone." "They'll scatter, find new packs, or stay here and maintain the city as a haven. Cade will lead them well." She closed her eyes. "My legacy, taking care of the abandoned even after I'm gone. It's a good legacy. It's not enough. I wanted more time, wanted to build more, save more." Her breathing was labored now. "Wanted to reconcile with you properly, figure out if we could be something again." "We could have been everything," Riker said. "If I hadn't been so stupid, so afraid." "We were both afraid. Both broken." She opened her eyes. "But we found each other again at the end. That's something." Gary approached carefully. "Riker, the North Pine Wolves are asking about moving the wounded, and the Blight Pack wants to know your intentions, if we're allies now or if this was temporary." Riker looked at Seraphina. She nodded weakly. "Talk to Cade. Propose alliance, trade agreements, protection pacts. Make something good come from this. You should be the one. I won't be here. You do it. Bridge the packs. Make them work together." She smiled faintly. "It's what I wanted. What I would have demanded if I'd won the challenge." Riker wanted to argue, wanted to refuse to leave her side. But she was right. The packs needed leadership, needed direction, and she was trusting him to provide it. "I'll be back," he promised. "I know." He laid her gently in Cade's care and stood to address both packs. "Listen," his alpha voice carried across the city. "The Wraith is defeated, but the threat it represents isn't gone. These creatures were sealed for a reason. If one woke, others might." He looked between North Pine and Blight Pack wolves. "We need each other. The Blight Pack has magical strength we lack. North Pine has resources they need. Together, we're stronger than separate." "You want alliance?" Cade asked. "After everything?" "The Revenant saved my wolves when she had no obligation. Fought beside us against a common enemy. Yes, I want alliance, trade, mutual defense, whatever it takes to make sure what she built survives." Murmurs rippled through both packs. Gary stepped forward. "As Alpha of North Pine, I second this. We propose formal alliance with the Blight Pack." Cade looked at Seraphina. She nodded weakly. "The Blight Pack accepts," Cade announced. "We'll negotiate terms after—" His voice caught. "After we've honored our Revenant properly." The crowd began dispersing, planning, organizing, healing. Riker returned to Seraphina's side. She was worse. The translucence of her skin had increased. He could see her bones beneath the frost-marked flesh. Her breathing was shallow and irregular. "Hours," he'd said earlier, "maybe minutes now." "Tell me something," Seraphina whispered. "Something true. Something I can hold on to." Riker thought about all the things he could say, all the apologies and explanations and regrets, but she'd asked for truth. "When I left you in the Blight," he said quietly, "part of me died too. The part that knew how to be happy, how to feel whole. I spent 5 years trying to convince myself it was necessary, that sacrificing you saved the pack." He took her cold hand in his, "But it didn't save anything. It destroyed me as thoroughly as the Blight transformed you. And when you came back, I saw what I'd thrown away. Not weak, not broken, but the strongest person I'd ever known." Tears streamed down his face. "I would give anything to undo it, to go back and choose differently, to have those 5 years with you and our child, to build what we could have been together." "But we can't go back," Seraphina said. "No, we can't. So all I have is this moment, and in this moment, I want you to know that you were never the burden I called you, never the weakness. You were always extraordinary." "I was just too blind and afraid to see it." Seraphina's eyes filled with silver tears. "I forgive you." The words shattered something in Riker's chest. "You shouldn't. I forgive you," she repeated. "Not because you deserve it, but because I don't want to die carrying that anger. I want to die knowing we found each other again, even if it was only for a moment." She squeezed his hand weakly. "And I'm sorry too, for becoming the Revenant, for planning such terrible revenge, for almost destroying you to satisfy my pain. You had every right. Rights don't matter. Only choices, and I choose forgiveness, for both of us." Riker pulled her into his arms, cradling her against his chest. "Don't go," he whispered. "Please, I just got you back." "I have to. The Blight is calling me home." Her voice was fading. "But I'm not afraid anymore, because I'm leaving knowing you loved me, really loved me. That's enough." "It's not enough. It'll never be enough." "Then make it enough." Her hand came up to his face one last time. "Live well. Lead well. Take care of my pack. Make something beautiful from all this ugliness." "Seraphina, thank you," she whispered, "for coming back, for fighting beside me, for showing me the bond was still there, for loving me, even when I tried so hard to make you hate me." Her breathing hitched, stuttered, stopped. The frost marks on her skin flared one final time, blazing with brilliant silver light, then dimmed, went dark. And Seraphina, the Revenant, the mother of outcasts, the woman who'd survived the impossible, was gone. Riker held her body and screamed. Around him, the Blight Pack felt it through the hive bond. 200 wolves fell to their knees as their connection to their alpha severed. The city's silver lights flickered, dimmed. Some went out entirely. The blight itself mourned. And Riker knelt in the center of it all, holding the body of the woman he'd loved and lost twice, and finally understood the full weight of what he'd destroyed 5 years ago. Not just a life, not just a future, but everything that mattered. The funeral took place 3 days later. Both packs attended. Wolves from neighboring territories came to pay respects. Even packs that had feared the Revenant showed up because her death meant something to everyone. They built a pyre in the city's center, placed Seraphina on top, surrounded by flowers that somehow grew in the Blight's dead soil. White flowers, pure as her hair. Cade spoke first. The Revenant saved us all, gave us life when we had none, purpose when we were lost. We will carry her legacy forward. This city will remain a haven for the abandoned. Her vision will live on. Gary spoke next. She showed us that strength comes in many forms, that the wolves we discard might be the very ones we need most. North Pine will never forget that lesson. Then Riker stood. He looked at the body of the woman who'd been his mate, his enemy, his salvation. I failed her, he said simply, abandoned her when she needed me most, spent 5 years in denial, and when she returned powerful enough to destroy me, she chose mercy instead. His voice broke. She was better than all of us, stronger, braver, more compassionate, and I didn't see it until too late. If I could change anything. He stopped, composed himself. If I could change anything, I would have trusted her strength from the beginning, would have stood beside her instead of casting her out, would have fought for our family instead of against it. He placed a single white flower on the pyre. I love you, he said quietly. I'm sorry I realized it too late. I'm sorry I wasted our time. I'm sorry for everything. Cade lit the pyre. They watched her burn, watched the silver flames consume her body, releasing her essence back to the Blight. And as the fire burned, snow began to fall. Not natural snow, magic snow. The Blight's final gift to its champion. Each flake was unique, perfect, beautiful, like her. By the time the fire burned out, the entire city was covered in a blanket of white. And Riker stood watching, his hand over his heart where the mate bond had lived, and felt the last thread of connection finally, truly sever. She was gone, and he would live with that loss for the rest of his days. Chapter 9. The Choice. Riker walked through the city of the dead every morning now. It had become routine. Wake before dawn, travel the 5 miles from North Pine Territory to the Blight Zone, walk the streets Seraphina had built, check on the wolves she'd saved, then return home and try to remember how to live. The city had changed since her death. The silver lights still burned, but dimmer. The geometric patterns in the streets remained, but felt less alive. The Blight itself had quieted, as if mourning its champion. But the wolves remained, 200 outcasts who'd found home here, who'd been transformed and given purpose, who now carried on her vision without her. Cade met him at the city gates as always. Riker. The massive wolf nodded in greeting. They'd developed an odd friendship over the past months, united in grief, united in determination to honor what she'd built. How are things? Riker asked. Stable. 3 new arrivals this week, abandoned by the Crescent Ridge Pack for various offenses. Cade fell into step beside him. We've taken them in, offered transformation, 2 accepted. And the 3rd? Wanted safe passage to neutral territory. We provided supplies and an escort. Cade smiled slightly, as she would have wanted. They walked through the city center where the pyre had burned. Fresh flowers surrounded the memorial stone, a pillar of blight-twisted wood carved with her name and the simple inscription, "She gave us home." Riker placed his usual offering, a single white flower, the same kind that had covered the city the night she died. You come every day, Cade observed. Why? Because I failed her in life. The least I can do is honor her in death." Riker touched the memorial stone. "And because it helps, remembering, keeping her alive in some way." "You're torturing yourself." "Maybe, but it's a torture I've earned." Cade was silent for a moment. Then, "She wouldn't want this. You living half a life, existing but not truly present. She's dead because of me. My abandonment set everything in motion. My actions drained her essence, fighting the Wraith. I killed her twice." "You loved her twice. That's not the same thing." Cade sat down on one of the benches Seraphina had designed. "The Revenant made choices, chose to save us, chose to fight, chose to help defeat the Wraith. You didn't force any of that. But you're not responsible for everything bad that happens to people you love. You made mistakes, terrible ones, but she forgave you. She told you to live well." Cade's silver eyes were intense. "So live well. Stop punishing yourself and actually do the work of honoring her legacy." Riker sat beside him. "I'm trying. The alliance is working. Trade between the packs, shared defense, cultural exchange." "That's politics. I'm talking about you." Cade leaned forward. "When was the last time you were truly happy? When did you last feel joy?" Riker thought back. Couldn't remember. "Exactly." Cade stood. "Come with me. There's something you need to see." Cade led him to the palace, to Seraphina's private chambers. They'd been preserved exactly as she left them, books on the shelves, maps on the walls, her clothing still hanging in the wardrobe, a shrine to a dead queen. "This is where she planned," Cade said, gesturing to the map table. "Tracked every abandoned wolf, plotted rescue routes, designed the city's expansion." He moved to the bookshelf. "This is where she read, learned, educated herself on pack law and politics so she could navigate the world she'd been cast into." Then to the window. "And this is where she stood every night, looking out at what she'd built, wondering if it would be enough, if she'd done enough good to balance the pain she'd suffered." Cade turned to face Riker. "Do you know what she told me the night before the challenge, when she was planning your destruction?" "What?" "She said, I want him to understand loss, to feel what I felt, to know what it's like to lose everything that matters." And then she said something else, something I didn't understand until later. Cade's expression was sad. She said, "And when he understands, when he truly feels it, maybe then he'll be capable of real change, of being the alpha he always could have been, the partner I needed him to be." Riker's throat tightened. "She was testing you," Cade continued, "pushing you to break, to transform the way she'd been transformed, not through blight magic, but through consequences, through loss, through understanding. She wanted me to suffer. She wanted you to grow. Suffering was just the tool." Cade moved to Seraphina's desk and pulled out a leather journal. She kept writing, even after the transformation, even after becoming the Revenant. He handed the journal to Riker. "Read it. It's time you understood who she really became." Riker sat in Seraphina's reading chair and opened the journal. The handwriting was familiar but changed, sharper, more controlled, like the gentle curves of her old script had been frozen into angular efficiency. The first entry was dated 2 weeks after her transformation. "I am no longer Seraphina. That woman died screaming in the cave. I am the Revenant now. Cold, powerful, free. So why do I still dream of him? Why do I wake reaching for warmth that isn't there? Why does the mate bond phantom ache worse than the blight's corruption? I tell myself I hate him, tell myself I'm planning revenge. But part of me still loves him, still wants him to come looking for me, still hopes he'll realize his mistake. Pathetic. I need to burn that part away too. Need to be truly free." Riker's hands shook as he turned the page. Entry after entry chronicled her struggle, the duality of being the Revenant while still carrying Seraphina inside her. The pain of transformation warring with the pain of love. "Met my 10th wolf today. A female, elderly, left to die because she could no longer hunt. I gave her strength, purpose, a family, and I realized this is my revenge. Not destroying him, but proving him wrong, proving that the weak he discarded are the strong he needed. Maybe when he sees what I've built, he'll understand. Maybe he'll regret. Maybe that will be enough. Months passed in the entries, years. Her writing grew colder, more detached, until one entry marked a week before she returned to North Pine. 5 years tomorrow. 5 years since he left me to die. 5 years of survival, building, planning. And I've realized something terrible. I don't want revenge anymore. I want him to see what I've become and acknowledge that he was wrong. I want him to understand what he destroyed. I want him to feel loss the way I felt loss. But more than that, I want to know if the man I loved is still in there somewhere, if he's capable of change, if he could be the partner I needed instead of the coward who abandoned me. So I'm going back, not for revenge, for truth, to see if Riker is worth saving, or if I need to finally let him go. The next entries were sparse, brief notes during her return, observations about the challenge, comments about her internal struggle. Then the final entry, dated the day before the Wraith attacked. Kale kissed me today. It was pleasant, safe, everything I should want. But I felt nothing, because my heart still belongs to a man who destroyed me, and I don't know how to take it back. Maybe I don't want to. Maybe loving Riker, even the broken, guilty version of him, is part of who I am now. Part of the Revenant, not weakness, just truth. I built this city on the ruins of my old life. Maybe I can build something new with him on the ruins of what we were. Maybe it's not too late for both of us to transform again, not through magic, through choice. We'll see. If he comes when I need him, if he chooses me over safety, if he proves he's changed, then maybe there's hope. Maybe... The entry ended there, unfinished, because the Wraith had attacked the next day, and she'd never gotten the chance to write the ending. Riker closed the journal and wept. She'd been testing him, pushing him, waiting to see if he'd transform the way she had. And he'd passed, barely, at the last possible moment. He'd come when she needed him, fought beside her, proved his love was real. But it had cost her everything. She believed in you, Cade said quietly. He'd been standing in the doorway, watching. Even when she was planning your destruction, part of her believed you could change, could be better. I was better, for about 5 minutes before she died. Then stay better. Cade entered the room. That's the point. She transformed you through her death, gave you the gift of understanding, of growth. Don't waste it wallowing in guilt. What am I supposed to do? Live the life she couldn't, be the alpha she would have wanted, build the world she envisioned. Cade placed a hand on his shoulder. You're co-leading 2 packs now, maintaining the alliance, changing how outcasts are treated. That's her legacy. That's you honoring her. It doesn't feel like enough. It never will. That's grief. Cade squeezed once, then released. But you keep doing it anyway, because that's what living means, moving forward while carrying the past. Riker stood, still holding the journal. Can I keep this? She would have wanted you to have it, to know the truth. Cade moved toward the door. There's one more thing. Come. Cade led him to the highest room in the palace, Seraphina's meditation chamber. It was small, circular, with windows looking out over the entire Blight Zone, the place where she'd connected with the Blight itself, where she'd commanded her pack through the hive bond. The frost marks on the floor still glowed faintly. Since she died, this room has been active, Cade said. The Blight responds here. Speaks in a way. I think it's trying to tell us something. What? Stand in the center, on the marks, and listen. Riker did. The moment his feet touched the frost marks, the world shifted. He wasn't in the palace anymore. He was in the cave where Seraphina had transformed. But it wasn't 5 years ago. It was now, and she was there, not physically, an impression, an echo, a piece of her essence that the blight had preserved. "Seraphina?" Riker breathed. "Not quite," her voice whispered through the cave. "I'm what the blight remembers of me, the part that stays after the body fails. Is this real?" "Real enough. I'm fading. Soon I'll be gone completely, but I had just enough time, enough essence left, to leave you this." The cave shimmered. Images appeared. Seraphina as she'd been before, young, gentle, hopeful. Then during the transformation, screaming, breaking, dying and being reborn. Then as the revenant, cold, powerful. Magnificent. Finally, in his arms at the end, forgiving, loving, at peace. "This is who I was," her voice said. "All of it. Not just the revenant, not just the abandoned Omega. All of it. The pain and the strength, the love and the rage, the fear and the courage. I know. I understand now. Do you? Do you understand that you don't have to carry all the guilt? That I made choices too? That we both failed and both grew and both transformed? I'm trying. Try harder, because I didn't survive 5 years in the Blight and build a kingdom and give everything to defeat the Wraith just so you could waste the rest of your life in grief." Her voice strengthened, became more present. "I need you to live, Riker, really live. Lead both packs, change the world, make what we suffered mean something." "How?" "By being the Alpha I always knew you could be. The one who values all wolves, who doesn't discard the different, who builds instead of destroys." The cave began to fade. "I have to go now. The Blight is calling me home completely." "Wait, I have so much to say, so much to apologize for." "I know. You've said it all already, and I've forgiven it all. Now forgive yourself." "I don't know how." "Then learn. You have time. Use it well." She appeared before him one last time. Not translucent, not ghostly, solid, real, the way she'd been in life. She cupped his face in her hands. "I love you," she said. "I loved you before. I loved you after. I loved you at the end. That never changed. Remember that. When guilt tries to claim you, remember that I loved you." She kissed him, gentle, warm, final. "Goodbye, Riker. Lead well, love well, live well, make me proud." Then she was gone. Riker stood in the meditation chamber, tears streaming down his face, Cade watching silently from the doorway. "What did you see?" Cade asked. "Her. One last time." Riker wiped his eyes. "She told me to stop wallowing, to actually live." "Sounds like her." Riker looked out the window at the city below, at the wolves moving through streets she'd designed, at the lights she'd lit, at the home she'd built. "I'm going to lead both packs," he said. "Officially. Gary wants me to take back the Alpha position. Says North Pine needs me." "And the Blight Pack?" "I want to be co-Alpha here, with you. Share leadership, maintain her vision while bringing North Pine's resources." He turned to Cade. "Would your pack accept that?" Cade considered. "If you prove yourself, if you lead with her values, if you remember always that this place is for the outcasts first." "I will. I swear it." "Then yes, the Blight Pack would accept you." Cade extended his hand. "Partner Alpha, equal leadership, continuing the Revenant's legacy together." Riker took his hand. "Partners." They shook. A new beginning sealed. "There's one more thing," Cade said. "The Blight itself. It's been quiet since she died, but it's not gone. It's waiting." "For what?" "For another champion. Someone to bond with it the way she did. To control its spread. Guide its power." Cade's silver eyes were thoughtful. "The texts say the Blight chooses those with purpose, with strong will, with need. Are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting that her death left a vacancy, and nature abhors a vacuum. Eventually, the Blight will choose again. But the transformation kills within 5 to 10 years. Yes, it's a death sentence for whoever accepts it, but also a gift of immense power for those years. Cade looked out at the city. If someone were willing to make that sacrifice, to lead for a few years knowing they'd burn bright and fast, they could do a lot of good. Riker thought about it, about Serafina's legacy, about the time she'd had versus what she'd accomplished. Not yet, he said finally. Let's lead without the Blight's direct intervention first. See what we can build with just alliance and determination. Agreed. But keep it in mind, the Blight is patient. It can wait. They left the meditation chamber together, and Riker felt, for the first time since her death, something like purpose stirring in his chest. She'd told him to live well. So he would, not for himself, for her, for the vision she'd died protecting, for the love they'd found and lost and found again at the very end. He would make her proud, however long it took, whatever it cost. He would honor her properly, not with grief and guilt, but with life and change and growth. That was the real revenge, the real transformation, not making him suffer, but making him better. 6 months later. Riker stood before the combined council of North Pine and Blight Pack wolves. Gary on his right, Cade on his left, both packs represented, both voices heard. The motion before us, Riker announced, is to establish formal guidelines for accepting wolves from other packs, not abandoned wolves, but those who voluntarily leave seeking better circumstances. Murmurs rippled through the council. You're proposing we actively recruit from other packs? Elder Torin asked. I'm proposing we offer sanctuary to any wolf who needs it, whether cast out or choosing to leave. Riker met the old wolf's eyes. The Revenant's vision was haven for the discarded. I want to expand that. Haven for anyone trapped in circumstances they can't escape. Other alphas will see that as theft. Other alphas need to earn their wolves' loyalty rather than demanding it. Riker's voice was firm. We're not stealing. We're offering choice. Any wolf who wants to stay with their pack is welcome too. Any who want something different are welcome here. This could start wars, Breck warned, or it could start evolution. Cade spoke up. Force packs to treat their members better, to value them, or lose them to places that do. The debate raged for hours, but by the end, the motion passed, not unanimously, but enough. The Blight Pack and North Pine Alliance would accept any wolf seeking refuge. No questions about why, no judgment about past, just acceptance. The way Serafina had accepted her pack. After the council dispersed, Riker walked alone to the memorial stone. Fresh flowers surrounded it as always. The pack, both packs, kept it maintained. A constant reminder of who'd made this all possible. We passed it, Riker said to the stone. To her memory. Your vision is expanding, growing beyond what you started. The wind picked up, carrying snow even though it was spring. Magical snow, the kind that had fallen the night she died. Riker smiled through tears. I know, I feel it too. Like you're here, like you're watching. He touched the stone. I hope I'm making you proud. I hope this is what you wanted. The snow fell heavier, gentle, beautiful. Yes, her voice seemed to whisper in the wind. This is everything I wanted. Keep going, keep building, keep changing the world. I'll always be here. In the snow, in the city, in every wolf you save, in you. Riker stood there for a long moment, letting the impossible snow cover him. Then he turned and walked back toward the palace, toward the life he was building, the legacy he was honoring, the future he was creating from the ashes of the past. She was gone, but she'd left him everything. The chance to transform, the chance to lead, the chance to make what they'd suffered mean something, and he wouldn't waste it. Not anymore. Chapter 10. The New World. 5 years later, the snow fell gently over the memorial stone as it did every year on the anniversary of her death. Riker stood before it as he always did, holding a single white flower. But this year, he wasn't alone. Behind him stood nearly 500 wolves, North Pine, Blight Pack, and dozens of others from territories across the region, all here to honor the Revenant, all here because her vision had changed everything. 5 years, Riker said, his voice carrying across the silent crowd. 5 years since Seraphina died defeating the Void Wraith. 5 years since we lost the woman who showed us that strength comes in many forms. He placed the flower on the memorial stone, now surrounded by hundreds of others. In those 5 years, we've transformed. Not through magic, through choice, through commitment to the values she embodied. He turned to face the assembled wolves. The North Pine Blight Alliance now encompasses 12 packs, 12 territories united not by conquest, but by shared vision, by the belief that every wolf has value, that the weak today might be the strong tomorrow. That mercy is not weakness, it's wisdom. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. We've changed how packs operate. No more automatic exile for the wounded. No more abandonment of the different. Every wolf gets opportunity, gets support, gets family. He looked at the faces before him, saw wolves who'd been cast-offs, rejects, abandoned. Now they were traders, craftsmen, warriors, leaders, contributing, thriving. She did this, Riker said quietly. One woman, dying from the blight, built the foundation for a better world, and we, all of us, have the privilege of continuing her work. Cade stepped forward. In 5 years, he'd grown into true leadership, co-alpha of the Alliance, Seraphina's vision made manifest. The Revenant told me once that she wanted to prove the system wrong, Cade said, wanted to show that discarding wolves was wasteful, cruel, unnecessary. He gestured to the massive crowd. I'd say she proved it. The wolves raised their voices in a unified howl, not of mourning, of celebration, for the woman who'd saved them, for the world she'd helped create, for the future she'd made possible. After the ceremony, Riker walked through the Blight City. It had expanded massively in 5 years, new buildings, new streets, a thriving community of nearly 1,000 wolves. The blight itself had stabilized, no longer spreading. The corruption remained, but contained, controlled by the collective will of the pack rather than a single champion. It was remarkable what they'd built without her, and heartbreaking that she couldn't see it. Still brooding? Riker turned to find Gary approaching, a smile on his weathered face. His friend had aged well, retired from active alpha duties 3 years ago, but still serving as advisor. Reflecting, Riker corrected. Same thing with you. Gary fell into step beside him. Though I notice you're less miserable about it than you used to be. I've learned to carry it differently. The grief doesn't go away, but it transforms, becomes part of you instead of crushing you. She'd be proud of what you've built. What we've built. None of this was just me. No, but you're the one who held it together, who took her vision and expanded it, who convinced 12 packs to change centuries of tradition. Gary clapped him on the shoulder. That's leadership, my friend. They walked in comfortable silence for a moment. Lydia's getting mated next month, Gary said casually, to a merchant wolf from the Western Territories. She seems happy. Good. She deserves happiness. She asked about you. Wanted to know if you'd moved on at all. Riker thought about the question. Had he moved on? In 5 years he'd had opportunities. Wolves who'd expressed interest. Offers of mating bonds from neighboring packs, seeking political alliance. He'd refused them all. I'm not looking to replace her, Riker said finally. What Seraphina and I had, even broken, even tragic, was once in a lifetime. I'm not diminishing it by trying to recreate it. So you're just going to be alone forever? I'm not alone. I have 2 packs, hundreds of wolves who depend on me. Purpose, legacy. Riker smiled slightly. That's enough, if you say so. Gary didn't look convinced. But Riker, it's been 5 years. She told you to live well. Living well includes letting yourself have joy, connection, maybe even love again. Maybe? Someday, when it feels right. Riker stopped at a street corner. For now, this is enough. Building what she started, making her vision real. Gary nodded, accepting it. Fair enough, but don't close yourself off completely. You're only 43. You've got decades left. Don't spend them all in memorial. I'll keep that in mind. That evening, Riker attended the council meeting in the Great Hall. The hall had been expanded to accommodate representatives from all 12 allied packs. Each alpha or their delegate had a voice. Each pack contributed to decisions. True democracy. The kind Serafina had started building. The motion before us, Alpha Tauren said. Yes, still alive, still leading Shadowcrest, though Kyle now handled most day-to-day operations, concerns the Eastern Territories. 3 packs there have expressed interest in joining the Alliance. What are their motivations? Kale asked. He'd become one of the Alliance's strongest voices, despite losing his courtship of Serafina. Or perhaps because of it, he'd channeled that energy into building something meaningful. Resources primarily, but also philosophy. They've heard about our treatment of outcasts. Want to participate? We should send ambassadors, Cade suggested. Assess their sincerity. Make sure they're not just seeking advantage. Agreed, Riker said. But we should also be open. The whole point of this alliance is growth, change. If we become exclusionary, we betray the Revenant's vision. The council debated. Voices raised in passion but not anger. Disagreement without hostility. It was beautiful. After hours of discussion, they reached consensus. Ambassadors would be sent. Terms would be negotiated. If the Eastern packs proved sincere, they'd be welcomed. The alliance would grow to 15 packs. We're becoming an empire, Breck observed. He'd softened considerably over the years. An empire built on compassion rather than conquest. Is that so different from what we were? Elder Tauren asked. We always had power structures, hierarchies. We've just changed what we value. That's everything, Riker said. Changing what we value changes how we lead, how we treat each other, how we build the future. He looked around the table at the assembled leaders. 5 years ago, most of you would have laughed at this. An alliance based on accepting the weak, on valuing diversity, on offering sanctuary to any wolf who needs it? Nods of acknowledgement. But we've proven it works. We're stronger together than we ever were separately, more stable, more prosperous, more resilient. All because one dying woman refused to accept that weakness was permanent, Kale said quietly. Refused to believe that rejection meant worthlessness. To the Revenant, Gary raised his cup. To the Revenant, the council echoed. They drank. And Riker felt her presence. Not physically, not even magically, but in the room, in the decision they'd made, in the world they were building. She was there. She'd always be there. Late that night, Riker climbed to the meditation chamber. The frost marks on the floor had faded over the years. The Blight's presence was quieter without a champion to channel it. But sometimes, in this room, he could still feel her. He sat in the center of the marks and closed his eyes. The world shifted. Not as dramatically as that first time. More subtle. A gentle transition from physical reality to something else. And she was there. Not solid. Not really present. Just an impression. An echo that grew fainter each year. Riker, her voice whispered. You came. I always come. On the anniversary. I know. I feel it. Your grief, your love, your determination. I miss you. I know. But you're doing well without me. Building things I never imagined. Taking my small vision and making it magnificent. It's what you would have done if you'd had time. Maybe, maybe not. I was good at survival, at revolution. But building, maintaining, growing peacefully, that's your strength. She drifted closer. He could almost feel her presence. We were always better together than apart, even at the end. I wish we'd had more time. We had exactly the time we were meant to have. No more, no less. A pause, and we used it well. We loved, we fought, We forgave. We transformed each other. I'm still transforming, every day, trying to be the alpha you believed I could be. You already are. You have been for years. You just don't see it yet. When will I see it? When you finally forgive yourself. When you accept that you're not defined by your worst mistake. When you let yourself be happy. I'm happy enough, liar. But her voice was gentle. You're content, purposeful, but not happy, not joyful, not truly alive. How can I be when you're not here? Because I'm not your only source of joy. I never was. I was just the most intense. She seemed to move around him. There's a whole world out there, Riker. Wolves who care about you. Possibilities you haven't explored. Life you haven't lived. I don't want to forget you. You won't. I'm woven into everything you do now, every decision you make, every wolf you save. I'm there. Her voice softened. But that doesn't mean you can't also have new experiences, new connections, maybe even new love. I don't want... Yes, you do. You're just afraid that loving someone else means betraying me, betraying our bond. Doesn't it? No, it means you're alive. It means you're capable of growth. It means you learned from our tragedy and can still open your heart despite the risk. She was fading. He could feel it. This might be the last time he could reach her like this. I have to go soon, she confirmed. The blight can't hold my echo much longer. I'm dissolving into it, becoming part of the land itself. No, not yet. I'm not ready. You are. You've been ready for years. You just don't want to let go. Because letting go feels like losing you again. You're not losing me. I'll always be here. In the snow, in the city, in the alliance, in your heart. Her presence wrapped around him like a gentle embrace. But you need to stop holding so tight to my ghost. Need to live forward instead of backward. I don't know how. Yes, you do. You've been teaching hundreds of wolves how to do exactly that. How to transform pain into purpose, loss into legacy, grief into growth. A pause. Now do it for yourself. Serafina, do you know what my last thought was? Before I died in your arms? What? That I was grateful for the transformation, for the pain, for everything, because it brought me back to you. Let me see the man you'd become. Let me forgive you and be forgiven. Let me die knowing I was loved. Her voice grew distant. I got my ending. It wasn't the one I wanted when I was young, but it was mine, and it was good. Now you go get yours, whatever that looks like, whoever it's with, however long it takes. Make me proud, Riker. One last time. Live. And she was gone, truly gone. The echo dissolved completely. The blight released its hold on her essence. Serafina, the revenant, his mate, his greatest failure and his greatest love, passed completely into memory. Riker sat in the empty meditation chamber and cried. Not with anguish, with release, with acceptance, with gratitude. She was right. He'd been holding too tight, letting grief and guilt define him when he should have been defined by growth and purpose. He'd transformed, just not fully. Time to complete it. One year later, Riker stood at the edge of the blight zone, watching the sunrise. 6 years since Serafina's death. 6 years of building, growing, changing. The Alliance now encompassed 18 packs. The Blight City had population of 1,500. Trade routes connected territories across the region. And most importantly, the culture had shifted. Other packs, not part of the Alliance, had started adopting similar values, treating their outcasts better, offering support instead of exile, valuing diversity. The revolution Serafina started had become mainstream. Beautiful morning. Riker turned to find a woman approaching. She was middle-aged, scarred, with kind eyes and calloused hands, a craftswoman from one of the Eastern packs who'd joined the Alliance 2 years ago. Her name was Iris. She'd been exiled from her original pack for refusing to abandon her disabled child. Had arrived at the Blight Zone expecting to die in the corruption. Instead, Cade had welcomed her, given her a home, purpose, family. She'd thrived, built a successful workshop, raised her child in safety, and over the past year, she and Riker had become friends. Maybe more than friends. He wasn't sure yet. Was still figuring out how to let himself feel without guilt, but he was trying. "It is beautiful," Riker agreed, though not as beautiful as 6 years ago when it snowed in spring. "The magical snow. I've heard the stories." Iris moved to stand beside him. "The blight mourning its champion." "Something like that." They stood in comfortable silence, watching the sunrise paint the Blight Zone in colors it shouldn't be able to hold, oranges and pinks over dead white trees. "Do you still miss her?" Iris asked quietly. "Every day." "Do you think you always will?" "Yes, but it's different now. Less sharp, more gentle, like an old scar that aches in cold weather." "That's grief healing." "I suppose it is." Iris turned to look at him. "You know I'm interested in you, right? As more than friends?" Riker's heart skipped. "I suspected. But you're not ready." "I don't know if I am or not. I'm trying to figure it out." He met her eyes. "Would you be willing to wait while I do?" "For a while. I'm patient, but not infinitely patient." She smiled gently. "I've been rejected before, Riker. I'll survive if you decide you're not interested, but I need to know you're at least trying, not just staying loyal to a ghost." "I'm trying," he said honestly. "It's just complicated." "Everything worthwhile is." She touched his hand, brief, warm, then walked away, leaving him to his thoughts. Riker looked down at his hand where she'd touched it. He'd felt something, small, tentative, the possibility of connection, not the burning intensity of the mate bond with Seraphina. Nothing could match that. But something real nonetheless. "Make me proud," Seraphina's last words echoed in his mind. Live. Maybe living meant opening himself to new possibilities. Maybe honoring her legacy meant not spending the rest of his life alone. Maybe. Snow began to fall. Impossible snow. In summer. Light and gentle. Riker looked up and laughed through sudden tears. "Okay," he said to the sky, to her memory, to whatever remained of her consciousness in the blight. "I get it. I'll try." The snow fell a little heavier. "Thank you," he could almost hear her say. Finally. 3 years later, 9 years after her death, the Grand Hall was packed for the ceremony. Representatives from all 23 Allied packs, wolves from independent territories. Even a few human delegates from settlements that had begun trading with the Alliance. The world had changed dramatically, and at the center of it all, Riker stood before the council. "We gather today," Elder Torin said, ancient now but still sharp, "to acknowledge what has become undeniable. The North Pine Blight Alliance is no longer just an alliance. It's a nation." Murmurs of agreement. A nation requires formal structure, clear leadership, recognized authority. Torin looked at Riker. "Riker of North Pine, formerly Alpha of a single pack, you have led this alliance for 9 years, built it from 2 packs to 23, changed how we treat each other, created prosperity and peace across territories that were feuding for generations." "With help," Riker interjected. "Cade, Gary, all of you. With help, yes, but under your vision. Your leadership." Torin smiled. "The Council has voted unanimously. We wish to formalize your position, to name you High Alpha of the Alliance, first among equals, leader of our nation." Riker looked across the assembled wolves, saw Cade nodding encouragement, Gary grinning, representatives from every pack showing support. "I accept," he said quietly, "on one condition." "Name it." "That we rename this nation, not the North Pine Blight Alliance. Something that honors where we came from, what we stand for, who made this possible. He paused. I propose we call ourselves the Revenant Territories, in honor of the woman who started this revolution, who showed us that strength comes in many forms, who gave her life so we could build something better. The room erupted in approval. Then it's decided, Torin announced. Rise. High Alpha Riker of the Revenant Territories, lead us into the future she envisioned. The crowd howled their approval, and Riker stood there, accepting the mantle, feeling the weight of responsibility and privilege. He'd come so far from the frightened Alpha who'd abandoned his pregnant mate in the Blight, had transformed completely. Not through magic, through choice, through pain, through growth. Seraphina had broken him, but in breaking, she'd rebuilt him into something better. That night, he walked alone to the memorial stone. It was tradition now. Every major decision, every milestone, he came here first, to tell her, to honor her, to remember. The stone was weathered after 9 years. The flowers had created a permanent garden around it. Wolves maintained it religiously, a shrine to their founding mother. We did it, Riker said softly. Built the nation you dreamed of. The Revenant Territories, 23 packs united, thousands of wolves living by the values you embodied. He touched the stone. I wish you could see it. Wish you could be here to lead it yourself. You do it better than I ever could. The wind picked up, gentle, warm. But you gave me the tools, the understanding, the vision, and I'm doing my best to honor it. He sat down, leaning against the stone. I'm happy, you know. Finally. It took 9 years, but I figured out how to carry the grief without letting it consume me, how to live forward while honoring the past. A pause. I'm seeing someone. Iris, the craftswoman from the Eastern Territories. Nothing official yet, but it's good, real. She knows about you. Knows she's not replacing you, just adding something new. The wind seemed to whisper approval. I think you'd like her. She's strong, practical, kind, everything I need. Not everything I had with you, nothing could be, but something solid and real. Riker closed his eyes. Thank you for breaking me, for forgiving me, for loving me even when I didn't deserve it, for showing me how to transform. He stood. I'm going to keep building this, keep growing the territories, keep changing the world. But I'm also going to live, really live, the way you told me to. He placed his usual white flower on the memorial. Goodbye, Seraphina. Not forever, just for now. I'll be back. He walked away and didn't look back, because looking back was the past, and he was finally, truly living in the present. Building toward a future she'd made possible but would never see. That was okay. That was grief and growth existing together. That was transformation complete. 15 years later, 24 years after her death. Riker stood on the balcony of the Capitol building, a massive structure built in the heart of what had once been the Blight Zone. The corruption had faded over decades, slowly, steadily. Without a champion to fuel it, the Blight had retreated. The land healed, trees grew, grass returned. The Blight City remained, but now it was surrounded by living forest, a symbol of death transformed into life. Below him, the city bustled, 20,000 wolves living in harmony, working, trading, building families. The Revenant Territories had grown to 47 packs, nearly the entire northern region, and at 72 years old, Riker was finally ready to step down. You're brooding again. He turned to find Iris, his mate of 14 years now, approaching with that knowing smile. Reflecting, he corrected. Same thing. She kissed his cheek. The council is ready. Are you? As ready as I'll ever be. They walked together to the council chamber. The new High Alpha was already there. Young, idealistic, brilliant. Cade's daughter. Born in the Blight, raised with the Revenant's values, educated in the new world they'd built. she'd be perfect. High Alpha Riker, she said formally. Soon to be former High Alpha, Riker corrected. After today, the title is yours. I'm honored and terrified. Good. That means you understand the responsibility. The ceremony was simple, transfer of authority. Formal recognition. When it was done, Riker stood before the assembled leaders, representing 47 packs, thousands of wolves, an entire nation, and spoke his final words as leader. 24 years ago, a woman died in my arms, the Revenant, Seraphina, my mate, my greatest failure, my greatest teacher. The room was silent. She spent 5 years in the Blight, built a city, saved hundreds, created a vision of a better world, then died making that vision possible. He looked around at the faces, young and old, scarred and whole, representing every variation of wolf. Everything you see around you, this city, this nation, this peace, exists because she refused to accept that rejection meant worthlessness, that weakness was permanent, that the world couldn't change. She transformed herself, transformed me, transformed all of us. And 24 years later, her revolution is complete, not because we've achieved perfection, but because we've fundamentally changed what we value, how we lead, who we protect. He smiled. I'm an old wolf now, lived longer than I deserved, built things I never imagined, loved deeply, lost deeply, learned deeply. And the greatest lesson she taught me? That transformation is constant, that we're never done growing, that the moment we think we've arrived is the moment we start dying. So I challenge you, all of you, to keep transforming, keep questioning, keep improving. Never settle for good enough when better is possible. He placed the High Alpha's circlet on the table. Lead well, honor her memory, build the world she died creating. Then he stepped down and walked out of the chamber, into the sunlight, into retirement, into the final chapter of his life. Iris took his hand. How does it feel? She asked. Free, he said honestly, like I've finally completed what I was supposed to do, carried her legacy as far as I could. Now it's someone else's turn. They walked through the city together, past the memorial stone, now a massive monument with her statue, beautiful, powerful, eternal, past the schools teaching her values, past the hospitals treating all wolves equally, past the markets where 47 packs traded freely, past the evidence of everything she'd made possible. And Riker felt at peace, not because the pain was gone, it never would be, but because the pain had meaning, had created something beautiful, had transformed the world. 5 years later, 29 years after her death, Riker was dying. He knew it. The healers knew it. Iris knew it. Old age, nothing dramatic, just the slow decline of a body that had lived fully. He lay in his bed in the small house they'd built on the edge of the city. The windows looked out over the forest that had reclaimed the Blight. Life returning where death had reigned. Fitting. Iris sat beside him, holding his hand. Their children, adopted, raised with love, had already said their goodbyes. Any regrets? She asked softly. None, he said honestly. I've lived well, loved well, built something meaningful. She'd be proud. I hope so. The sun was setting, the room filling with golden light, and Riker felt himself slipping, not painfully, gently, like falling asleep. Iris, he said. Thank you for everything, for patience, for love, for sharing your life with a man who was carrying a ghost. Thank you for letting me in, for choosing to live despite the pain. She kissed his forehead. Go, she whispered, find your peace. Riker closed his eyes, and the world shifted one final time. He wasn't in his bedroom anymore. He was in the cave, the Blight cave, where Seraphina had transformed. But it wasn't dark or corrupted. It was filled with soft silver light. And she was there, young, whole, no frost marks, no corruption, just Serafina as she'd been before everything went wrong. You, Riker breathed. She smiled, that gentle, hopeful smile from before. Me. Is this real? Real enough. The blight keeps echoes, and I kept one just for you, for this moment. She walked toward him, and he saw he wasn't old anymore either. Young again, whole. You did it, she said. Built everything I dreamed of, changed the world, lived well. We did it, together, even though you weren't there. I was always there, in every decision, every choice, every moment of growth. She took his hands. And I watched you transform, watched you build, watched you finally let yourself be happy. I never stopped loving you. I know, but you also loved her, Iris. That was good. That was right. I felt guilty. You shouldn't have. The heart is infinite. There's room for old love and new. She squeezed his hands. I'm just grateful you let yourself live, really live. Because you told me to. Because you chose to. That's the difference. I gave you permission, but you did the work. The cave around them began to brighten. What happens now? Riker asked. Now? Now you rest. You've earned it. She smiled. Unless you'd rather keep building, keep changing the world, there's always more work to do. I think rest sounds good, for a while at least. Then rest with me, here, in this space between what was and what will be, in peace. She pulled him into an embrace, and Riker felt everything he'd carried for nearly 60 years finally, completely release. The guilt, the grief, the pain, the weight of responsibility, all of it dissolving, leaving only love, only peace, only gratitude for a life fully lived. Thank you, he whispered against her shoulder, for everything, for breaking me, for rebuilding me, for making me better. Thank you for choosing to change, for honoring what we had, for making our pain mean something. They stood there, holding each other while the blight cave filled with light, and somewhere in the physical world, Riker took his last breath, surrounded by family, at peace, complete. Epilogue. 50 years after Serafina's death, the Revenant territories had grown to encompass the entire northern region, 63 packs, 100,000 wolves, the largest, most prosperous nation in recorded history, and every year, on the anniversary of her death, they gathered. Young wolves who'd never known her, who'd grown up in the world she made possible. They placed flowers on her monument, told stories of the Revenant, the woman who'd survived the blight, who'd built a kingdom from outcasts, who'd changed everything. Most of the stories were exaggerated, some were partly invented, but they all carried the truth at their core, that one woman, rejected and abandoned, had refused to accept her fate, had transformed herself and in doing so, transformed the world, had proven that strength wasn't about never falling. It was about rising, that mercy wasn't weakness, it was wisdom, that love, even broken, even tragic, could change everything. The snow fell gently over the monument. Magical snow, the kind that fell every year on this day, the blight's last gift, a reminder that she was still there, still watching, still proud of what they'd built. A young wolf, no more than 6 years old, tugged on her mother's sleeve. "Mama, why do we celebrate someone who died so long ago?" The mother smiled. "Because she gave us something precious. She gave us a better world, and the least we can do is remember, honor, carry forward. Will I help carry forward? If you choose to." That's what she taught us, that we all have choice, that we can all transform, that we're all stronger than we think. The young wolf nodded seriously, then placed her own flower on the monument, one more bloom in a sea of thousands, one more life touched by a woman who'd been dead for half a century, One more piece of evidence that some legacies never die. They just grow and change and transform forever.
Some stories don't end in perfect redemption. Some mistakes cost everything and leave scars that never fully heal. But those scars can become strength. That pain can become purpose. And that loss can become legacy. Riker abandoned his mate and destroyed their family. Serafina survived and became something extraordinary. They found each other again at the very end, forgave, loved, and then she died. But her death wasn't the ending. It was the beginning of transformation, of growth, of a world that valued compassion over cruelty, strength over dominance, love over fear. She didn't get her fairy tale, but she got something better. She got legacy. She got meaning. She got to change the world. And in the end, that was enough. Thank you for reading the story of Serafina and Riker. May their transformation inspire your own.